Chapter 121. Wei Wei Bai suddenly stood up. Well, it's our turn. He Poen looked at her strangely. Don't you have anything to say? For example, going to the bathroom, having a stomachache, suddenly having a period, or other excuses, and then leaving. Wei Wei Bai looked at him strangely. No, let's go in. He Poen slowly got up and slowly walked step by step. Just like a snail. Wei Wei Bai patiently waited for him, seemingly waiting for him to walk for a few hours. He Poen walked halfway and found that Wei Wei Bai's face was serious. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but he suddenly turned around and walked away. Wei Wei Bai looked at him in surprise and then followed him. Aren't you going to divorce? He Poen said coldly. I'm hungry. Wei Wei Bai quickly said, now the divorce procedure is very simple, it's very fast. You can go eat after we divorce. He Poen walked quickly and snorted, I'm hungry, I don't want to do anything. They had already rushed out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Wei Wei Bai suddenly broke out, she reached out and grabbed He Poen. What are you doing? He Poen, can't you be normal? He Poen didn't look at her, his eyes slightly trembling, but his tone was still tough. When I'm normal, I do what I want to do. Wei Wei Bai's face was a lot of decadence. She suddenly let go of him and then staggered back 2 steps. Did you hear it just now? He Poen frowned. What did I hear? Wei Wei Bai chuckled, but there was no smile in her eyes. Love will disappear, He Poen. He Poen's heart was blocked. Wei Wei Bai continued, I don't have such good patience. That woman can love a person for 10 years without asking for a response. I can't. 5 years is my limit. He Poen wanted to pull out a sneer and say that he didn't care, but he didn't know why, he couldn't pull out a smile. Wei Wei Bai's smile faded. Do you know? I wait for a person's response day and night. Other than watching your videos and photos, I don't get any feedback at all. No matter how passionate the love was, it would disappear eventually. I forced you and hurt you, but I really did love you. Loved, pass. He Poen's hands clenched into fists, and suddenly his breathing became somewhat sluggish. Wei Wei Bai's voice was light, but when it fell into He Poen's ears, it was heavy enough to crush him. I really don't have any thoughts about you now, and I can't like you anymore. Wei Wei Bai endured the sadness in her heart. Can you not appear in front of me again? I'm too tired. Just looking at you makes me suffer. Can you just let me go? You clearly don't like me, so why are you still holding on to me? One question after another, but He Poen felt so sad that he wanted to avoid it. Wei Wei Bai turned around, tears rolling down her cheeks. Do you know how cruel you are? You're making me think there's still hope. I haven't loved you for the next 5 years. Don't show a trace of caring about me when you don't love me. I'm afraid that I'll rekindle my love for you. He Poen opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Wei Wei Bai said, if you don't like me, then don't care about me. After that, Wei Wei Bai immediately left. He Poen didn't chase after her, he just stood there, as if he was hit. Wei Wei Bai walked around the corner, then leaned against the wall with a sad face. The system was silent and wanted to comfort her. Suddenly, it heard her say, 3, 2, 1. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 50. Wei Wei Bai coldly snorted, little guy, see if I can't deal with you. To read the https://www.soshu.com to read https://www.soshu.com to text to read https://msoshu.com. Chapter 122. System. Who am I, where am I going? How did the favorability increase? It silently took out the calculator. It had to calculate whether the system had made a mistake, so the favorability reminder was also wrong. Wei Wei Bai said, narcissism is a disease, it has to be treated. If I didn't use the medicine, He Poen, this guy, would think that I really loved him until death. The system modestly held the calculator and asked, so? How did the favorability increase in the end? Wei Wei Bai looked proud, so, of course, I slapped him hard and told him that I don't like him anymore. He will wake up from his narcissistic arrogance and know that if he doesn't cherish me, then I will leave. People are all bitches. What is easily obtained will never be cherished and will not be considered precious. So, if you slap Hipoen to wake him up, he will be anxious, and when he is anxious, the favorability will definitely increase. The system praised, the host is very knowledgeable. Bai Weiwei smiled smugly and was about to say she didn't dare. System, it seems that you are also a senior narcissist. Weiwei Bai, Hipoen saw that Weiwei Bai was gone and stood there in a daze. He seemed to have been suddenly awakened. His brain was buzzing, and there was only one thought. It turned out that Weiwei Bai really didn't like him anymore. He took a few steps forward and wanted to chase after her, but he felt that he would lose face. If she didn't like him, then she didn't like him. Hipoen stood there for a while before he found that Weiwei Bai was really gone. She didn't look back at him, nor did she deliberately come back to get close to him. He didn't know what was wrong with him. His heart was so flustered that he felt uncomfortable. Even his stomach began to ache faintly. When he returned to the apartment, Xiao Mu was still there. He was packing up Weiwei Bai's things. He asked people to bring Weiwei Bai's things. Weiwei Bai just packed some essentials before leaving. The rest was piled up in the guest room. Xiao Mu was almost done packing. When he saw Hipoen coming back, he immediately smiled and said, "Nge, look, this is your first year of debut collection. Now it can't be found." Sister Weiwei actually hid it. Hipoen looked at Xiao Mu sluggishly and then looked at the collection in his hand. Xiao Mu thought that he was interested in these things and immediately moved several large boxes out. "Look, Brother An, Sister Weiwei has collected a lot of your things." Hipoen saw these boxes, hesitated, then squatted and reached out to open them. There were photos of him on variety shows, at the airport, and on the streets. There was also his autographed picture. Another box was his information collection. Was clipped from newspapers, magazines, and other newspapers, pasted and pasted. And around him, there were posters, cups with his face printed on them, and so on. Hipoen opened those things and looked at them little by little. Xiao Mu was still saying excitedly, "Sister Weiwei is simply your little fangirl. She should be chasing after a star, brother, and she. No, she was chasing love. Then she couldn't catch up, so she left." Hipoen held his old posters in his hand and asked Xiao Mu, "She didn't say that these things should be taken away?" Xiao Mu said, "No, Sister Weiwei said that these things can be dealt with casually." Hipoen looked at Xiao Mu like he was a fool. Weiwei Bai's words made it clear that she didn't want these things. Didn't she want them to throw them in the trash can? Xiao Mu asked, "By the way, where is Sister Weiwei? Is she abroad?" Chapter 123. Hipoen held back for a long time. "No." Xiao Mu wondered, "Didn't catch the plane? When will she come back?" For the first time, Hipoen didn't know how to answer. "She won't come back." He thought that he had said those words casually. But Xiao Mu looked at him in surprise. Hipoen looked like he was about to cry. Hipoen also knew that he was out of control. He looked down at the things that were thrown away by Weiwei Bai. It was as if it was not the things that were thrown away, but him. The grievances came up. Hipoen reached out and rubbed his face. His eyes were a little red, and his tone was disdainful. "If you don't want it, then don't. Throw these things in the trash can for me." Xiao Mu was shocked, "Nge, it takes a lot of time to collect these, and these are Weiwei sisters." Hipoen was angry, "I told you to throw them away. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Are you her assistant or my assistant?" Xiao Mu was yelled at by him and had to throw them away pitifully. Hipoen saw that the big boxes were thrown away and lay on the sofa with a sigh of relief, looking at the ceiling. "Anyway, she won't come back. Anyway, she doesn't like him. Then throw them all away." Hipoen tried to ignore the anxiety and discomfort in his heart, but he couldn't calm down. Xiao Mu came back, "Nge, the things have been thrown away. I'll go back first." Hipoen coldly snorted, "If you want to get out, get out. I'll rest for a few days. You let the director film the progress of others first." Xiao Mu nodded, "Okay." Hipoen was a well-known workaholic. His work progress was much faster than others, so even if he took a break for a while, It wouldn't affect anything. After Xiao Mu left, the surroundings were empty again. Poen felt that he was going crazy. He got up and poured a glass of wine. He still couldn't calm down his uncomfortable mood. He paced back and forth in the living room. In the end, he felt like he was in a daze. Suddenly, he glanced at the time and found that the garbage truck was coming. Poen was anxious. Looking at the time ticking by, he suddenly rushed out of the apartment and into the elevator. Amidst the slow and tortuous elevator, he finally reached the first floor. The garbage was collected and disposed of in an open space outside the building. Poen saw that the garbage dump had started to move. He rushed over. "Put down the trash in your hand." When the worker in charge of disposing of the garbage saw a handsome man in slippers and home clothes, he rushed over and took away the garbage in his hand. Then, he watched as this strange man began to rummage through the trash. Garbage bags were opened one by one. Poen went crazy and finally pulled out the things that Wei Wei Bai collected from the garbage. Then one box after another was moved out. He glared at the person carrying the garbage and said, "Don't move." The other party was so scared that he was trembling. He was handsome, but it was useless even if his brain wasn't clear. How could he hug trash like he was hugging a treasure and laugh so terrifyingly? Poen asked the guard to move the things back to his apartment. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he breathed a sigh of relief, he found that his stomach was acting up again. Sure enough, it was the disaster of drinking and losing control of his emotions. His stomach, which had not acted up for a long time, actually acted up twice in a row. Poen frowned, but there was a thought in his heart. He was not angry, but happy, and immediately called Wei Wei Bai. Beep, she did not answer. Chapter 124. Poen looked at the phone pitifully, then gritted his teeth and tried to call again. He didn't answer. Hit again, 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 hit. Wei Wei Bai couldn't bear it and finally connected. Poen, you're so annoying. Poen was silent for a while, then said awkwardly, "My stomach hurts." Wei Wei Bai said without any hesitation, "What about Xiao Mu?" Poen lied without blinking. He went out this morning and fell. He broke his leg and is lying in the hospital. Wei Wei Bai didn't feel soft at all. "Oh, then take the medicine. You can pour the water by yourself." Poen immediately breathed intermittently. "I'm in pain, I can't get up." Wei Wei Bai said coldly, "Then you can swallow it." So cold, so cruel. Poen felt that he was crazy. Why did he call her when his stomach hurt? He got angry. "I can't get up, and I can't get the medicine. I'll just die from the pain." After that, he hung up the phone fiercely. Then he lay on the sofa and looked up stupidly. His stomach cramped, but he didn't feel it at all. Because he felt that his chest was tighter and the pain was worse. Poen curled up angrily. If she didn't come, he didn't care. The door of the apartment suddenly opened. Poen suddenly turned around, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Wei Wei Bai came. "Nge, what's wrong with you?" Xiao Mu came in with a bag of supermarket food. The surprise in Poen's eyes dimmed, and he turned his head. Nothing. Xiao Mu went to the kitchen, put the food in the refrigerator, and then came out and said, "I seem to have seen Wei Wei's sister." Poen's ears immediately stood up. "Where did you see her?" Xiao Mu, "When I came up, I saw Wei Wei's sister coming here by taxi, but I just pressed the elevator and didn't have time to say hello to her." Poen immediately sat up. He used too much force and pulled his stomach, making his face pale. Xiao Mu became anxious. "Brotherin, is your stomach acting up?" Poen pushed him away and immediately said, get out of here quickly." Little Mu was dumbfounded. "Where are you going? I haven't cooked for you yet." Poen's expression was both painful and joyful. "Go to the hospital and tell the doctor that you need treatment for your broken leg." Little Mu lowered his head and looked at his leg. It was fine. Where was it broken? Poen was afraid that his lie would be exposed and said fiercely, "If you don't go, I will break your legs." Little Mu's legs trembled, and he immediately left. Poen didn't forget to remind her, "Remember to take the stairs." Little Mu felt that it was not his leg that was broken, but brother An's brain. Cough, cough. After Xiao Mu left, He Po-en immediately lay back on the sofa. His stomach was getting more and more painful, but he was getting more and more excited. She still came to see him. He Po-en couldn't wait to laugh out loud, but soon his face turned ugly. What was he looking forward to? It was as if he couldn't wait for her to come. He Po-en pursed his lips and thought about the plays he had acted in. The more tragic it was, the more he thought about it. Thinking about it, his eyes showed sadness, coupled with the pale face caused by the stomach pain. He looked like he was going to die. Wei Wei Bai knocked on the door, but no one opened it. She tried to open the door, but the door was not locked. She went in and saw He Po-en curled up on the sofa. His hair was messy, and his face was miserable. He looked like he was going to die from the pain. Chapter 125. Wei Wei Bai immediately walked over and saw that his forehead was sweating, his muscles were twitching, and his mouth was crying out in pain. He looked like he was delirious. He Po-en. Wei Wei Bai reached out and touched his face, which was covered in cold sweat. She frowned and immediately ran to get the medicine and warm water. Then she reached out and held his head, trying to feed him the medicine. He Po-en didn't appreciate it. He shivered and said, "Pain, I'm in pain." Wei Wei Bai looked reluctant. She sighed, "Do you have to be like this? I can't leave?" He Po-en seemed to have just found out who the person was. He gritted his teeth and said, "Didn't you leave? I don't want you to care." The softness in Wei Wei Bai's eyes broke little by little. She was silent for 2 seconds, then she let go of him and turned to leave. He Po-en was stunned, his heart panicked. He immediately reached out and grabbed her clothes. Wei Wei Bai didn't look back. "Let go, I'm leaving." He Po-en felt uncomfortable. Why didn't she coax him? His stomach hurt. His fingers were more forceful. Although his tone was still tough, there was a trace of imperceptible pleading. "Don't go." Wei Wei Bai hesitated. She seemed to be struggling with something. Finally, her body relaxed and she finally turned back. Then she turned back, bent over and handed the medicine to his mouth. "Take the medicine." He Po-en immediately stuck out his tongue and rolled the medicine in her palm. The warm contact made the two people tremble at the same time. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 55. Wei Wei Bai's face was stained with a few traces of red. She fed him the water, then brought a blanket and covered him. "You rest." Wei Wei Bai whispered. "Are you leaving?" He Po-en asked anxiously. Wei Wei Bai hesitated for a few seconds, then said, "I'll leave later." He Po-en was relieved and barely maintained a look of indifference. "As long as you want, you can stay as long as you want." The medicine took effect and He Po-en's complexion improved. Every time he had a stomachache, he would feel particularly tired. His eyelids were obviously fighting, but he couldn't help but half open his eyes and look at her from time to time. Wei Wei Bai sat quietly beside him, her face expressionless. When the afterglow of the setting sun shone in from outside the window, it brought a trace of gentle light to her face. The two of them stayed together quietly. There was a kind of gentleness that came from years of peace. He Po-en felt at ease and fell asleep. He didn't know how long he had slept, but he heard the sound of the door closing. He opened his eyes in shock and found that Wei Wei Bai hadn't left. Instead, she walked in from the other side of the door. Did she just leave? He actually slept like a log and didn't notice at all. He Po-en broke out in a cold sweat. He stabilized his emotions, afraid that Wei Wei Bai would see that he was out of control, so he immediately closed his eyes again and pretended to be asleep. Wei Wei Bai seemed to put something on the table, and then she walked to his side. "Po-en." She called him softly. Her voice was soft and clear, surprisingly pleasant to hear. He Po-en continued to pretend to be asleep. Suddenly, her hand stroked his face. If he wasn't used to acting and rehearsing, his muscles might have tightened. Her hand gently and carefully touched his eyes. The strength of her fingertips was as light as a feather. It was full of a feeling of cherish. He was like a treasure in her hands. "If only you were older." Wei Wei Bai's fingers gently slid across his lips and said somewhat self-deprecatingly, "Older?" He Po-en sneered in his heart. Was he not old enough? The download address is at https://www.soshu.com teether. Chapter 126. Her voice sounded with worry. You are now in the sky, so you can't see how cruel the entertainment industry is. You have offended too many people. Although you have fans, if one day you are stepped on, who can help you? Poen didn't expect her to worry about this. Wei Wei Bai sighed, I don't have the strength now, I can't help you. He didn't need her help. Wei Wei Bai smiled bitterly, you don't want me to help you, and even if I want to advise you not to be too proud, you won't listen to me. Poen. He was now so popular that anyone who saw him would praise him. Who dared to say that he was not good? Wei Wei Bai asked him to be modest. Poen's heart softened, he knew what she said was right. Wei Wei Bai's fingers left his face. Poen was still a little reluctant to part with the warmth of her fingers. When I was a child, there was a time when my face had a lot of red dots. It was very ugly. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be a little sad. Her voice was reminiscent. At that time, I was bullied, but no one helped. Everyone said that I was ugly. Who was ugly? He was the most beautiful person in the world, and the second was Wei Wei Bai. There was no third place, everyone below them was ugly. I was very inferior. Even if the red dots on my face disappeared and I became more beautiful, I still felt that I was ugly. Poen's eyelashes trembled. He didn't understand this kind of inferiority because he was praised since he was a child. Wei Wei Bai touched her face. Later, I started to wear makeup. Looking at my makeup face, I had some confidence to stand in front of people. Was this why she didn't dare to see people without makeup? Poen thought that she was vain before and suddenly felt a little sad. When I first saw you, I thought you were very beautiful and confident, completely different from me. Wei Wei Bai's tone became sweet. At that time, I was always thinking about you. If only I was as beautiful as you, then I could go out without makeup. The more Poen listened, the more uncomfortable he felt. You look good without makeup. He wanted to comfort her. Wei Wei Bai laughed. It's a pity that you don't like me, so I feel more and more inferior. Poen felt that his heart was being twisted by something, and the pain was overwhelming. Was he the cause of her inferiority? Wei Wei Bai said with relief, I don't care now. If I feel inferior, then so be it. Anyway, I'm not acting anymore, so I don't need to pretend to be full of confidence. Poen's heart was twisted again. She couldn't act because he suppressed her. Wei Wei Bai lowered her voice. Besides, I've already given up on you. There's no need for me to pretend in front of you anymore. His heart was no longer twisted. Instead, it was as if someone had cut off a piece of it. The bloody pain was overwhelming. Poen sat up and said, You are beautiful. Wei Wei Bai looked at him in shock. Poen was embarrassed. No, I mean, the night is beautiful tonight. Wei Wei Bai looked at the window. It was drizzling outside. The night was cold and windy. Beautiful? Poen was even more embarrassed. His mind was blank. What did he want to say? Wasn't he usually very talkative? How come at this critical moment, his mouth was like a zipper? He hurriedly remedied, trying to restore his excellent image. I said, what do you feel inferior about? Look at your eyes, they are like stars. Look at your mouth, it's like a rose. Look at your skin, it's not as delicate and white as yours on a snowy day. Although you're not as beautiful as me, you're also very good looking. The download address is at https://www.soshu.com teether. Chapter 127. Is this comforting? Wei Wei Bai looked at him like a fool. Poen felt that the more he said, the more unreliable he was. He was anxious and simply held her face. I said it's not worth it for you to feel inferior, and I never look at whether my friends are good-looking or not. Anyway, they are not as good-looking as me. Wei Wei Bai and the system at the same time. No, there is actually someone in this world who is more shameless than me, than the host. Poen saw Wei Wei Bai's indifferent face and felt that he had messed up. Why is it so difficult to comfort people? Wei Wei Bai saw him like this and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Her eyes were very bright and her smile was very warm. The anxiety in He Poen's heart was washed away by this smile. Someone really laughed, and her eyes were as bright as stars. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 60. Wei Wei Bai's smile deepened. Eat something. Xiao Mu said you didn't eat anything. He Poen felt guilty. You met Xiao Mu? Wei Wei Bai nodded. When I came, I just met him. He walked quickly, saying that his leg was broken and he needed to go to the hospital to see a doctor. He also asked me to take care of you. He Poen, Wei Wei Bai handed him the porridge. The rice grains were cooked, sticky and fragrant. He Poen immediately took it, drank 2 mouthfuls, and then said condescendingly, the porridge you made is very delicious. Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. Oh, I bought it. He Poen almost choked on the porridge in his mouth. Why didn't she play by the rules? After eating the porridge, He Poen's stomach didn't hurt anymore, so he slowly sat up from the sofa. Wei Wei Bai also immediately got up, tied it up, and then picked up her shoulder bag. You're almost better, I'll go first. He Poen was a little anxious. It's raining outside. Wei Wei Bai said coldly, it's more romantic to take a walk in the rain. He Poen was not sure that Wei Wei Bai would stay for him. His eyes were a little gloomy. He pinched his fingers and made a decision in his heart. I have something to tell you. Wei Wei Bai was about to leave, but when she heard his words, she stopped in her tracks. He Poen's back was against the light, his face was in the shadow, there was a sense of determination and toughness. Let's sign a new contract. Wei Wei Bai turned around and saw that He Poen had already turned on the computer and was writing the contents of the contract. The computer was connected to the printer, and the contract was printed out quickly. He Poen took the contract and handed it to Wei Wei Bai. Let's sign the contract. Wei Wei Bai hesitated for a moment before taking the contract, but she didn't look at it. Instead, she looked at He Poen and seemed to be hesitating. He Poen was afraid that she would go back on her words, so he immediately pulled out a pen and stuffed it into her hand. You and I are already tied together. The news about the two of us is too hot recently. Everyone knows that the two of us are a very loving couple. Wei Wei Bai said somewhat self-deprecatingly, so what? It's what they think, not the truth, isn't it? This sentence stung He Poen, and his mood was sour. But if we divorce at this time, the blow to me will be very big. Wei Wei Bai threw the contract in her hand to the ground. So what? It's none of my business. He Poen felt that he had been hit, and his heart was filled with all kinds of emotions, all of which made him sad. The content of the contract is, we pretend to be a loving couple, and when the heat dies down, we will discuss divorce. Teether. Chapter 128. He Poen said without confidence, you can ask for anything you want. If you want to film again, I'll immediately contact a big production for you. Ding, congratulations to the host for opening a side task. Please complete a movie shooting, so that I don't give you the best acting skills in vain. The side task came unexpectedly. Wei Wei Bai thought that there were no side tasks in this plane. Wei Wei Bai was silent for a long time, then said to him, I'll think about it. He Poen was immediately overjoyed. He had been rejected by Wei Wei Bai too many times. It was rare for her to not think about it in detail, which made him very happy. Then you take your time to think about it, I'm not in a hurry. He Poen immediately picked up the contract on the ground and then stuffed it to Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai thought about it for a long time, and He Poen sat opposite her and stared at her. System, hurry up and sign it. Host, you and he have been staring at each other for a long time. I'm sleepy. They didn't need to rest, but it did. Wei Wei Bai, well, he wanted me to leave, today he begged me to stay, I won't kill him. The system looked at her, and then at He Poen. These two guys could really stay up. They had been sitting in the middle of the night, but their eyes were still full of energy. The system silently pulled down the blindfold. It didn't care about them, so it said goodnight first. Wei Wei Bai, of course, couldn't stay up. She was also sleepy, so she thought about it and fell asleep on the sofa. He Poen stared at the contract, and when he looked up, he found that Wei Wei Bai was asleep. He wanted to pick her up and go to bed, but he was afraid that she would wake up and leave. He had to carefully take the quilt and cover her. Wei Wei Bai's sleeping face was quiet and soft, but with a few traces of paleness, she looked a little haggard. He Poen felt that his heart was tied to a deer, jumping to the east and jumping to the west. Anyway, it just wouldn't settle down. While she was asleep, he took the opportunity to sneak a kiss on her cheek. He left as soon as he touched her. Like a thief. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 65. He Poen didn't know when he fell asleep. Anyway, when he woke up, he didn't see Wei Wei Bai. He was shocked and looked around. Only then did he confirm that he was the only one left in the apartment. His mood suddenly changed when he saw the contract on the table. He began to feel nervous again. Bai Weiwei wouldn't refuse, right? He sluggishly opened the contract and found that it already had Bai Weiwei's signature. In the condition column, there was only one requirement. She was going to make a movie. Such a request was a piece of cake for He Poen. He Poen looked at the contract and couldn't help but smirk. Signing this means that you still can't let go of me. I don't believe that you can still say that you don't want me. The contract was just a means of binding. Many celebrities would sign such a contract. However, everyone had feelings. When the fake became real in the end, there were many people who were tempted. There were plenty of opportunities for him to fall in love with her. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 70. The system had given up on the treatment. It didn't want to analyze how the favorability rose. It didn't understand the world of the drama queen. Wei Wei Bai was looking at the movie. All of you, do you think I should shoot Titanic or Avatar? The system was expressionless. You can shoot the birth of the drama queen. Wei Wei Bai sighed. Oh, my acting is too good. There is no director in the world who can match me. System, your face is so big that the basin can't hold it. T. Chapter 129. Wei Wei Bai touched her face again. I have such good acting skills, I don't need to be so beautiful. System, it was wrong. This basin can hold the Pacific Ocean, but it can't hold the host's face. Wei Wei Bai suddenly thought of a problem. I'm in this plane for 3 months. How do I go back when the 3 months are up? Sudden death. He had died accidentally in the previous 2 planes, so she had forgotten to ask about it. The system flipped through the collection and pulled out the host's departure manual. Oh, each plane has a fixed way of dying. In the first plane, if you didn't die at the end, a bolt of lightning would kill you. Wei Wei Bai, fortunately, she died early, and died a very heroic death. Being killed by lightning is too ugly. In the second plane, if you didn't die at the end, you would step on a skirt corner and hit a pillar to death. Wei Wei Bai, she was right to choose her dog. In the third plane, you died of leukemia. Wei Wei Bai, leukemia? After she finished speaking, her hand suddenly felt heavy. She looked down and saw that it was a stack of medical records. System, in theory, your body is already sick, but I helped you block the physical discomfort, so you can still be lively, but when the 3 months are up, you will die. This information is recorded in the hospital, and anyone can find it. Wei Wei Bai said, I hate to be sick. In reality, she was dragged down by heart disease. In the end, she was caught by Yao Yao, and she was so angry that she directly died. System, when the favorability reaches 100, you can go back without pain. Do a few more tasks and you can retire, so do your best. Wei Wei Bai was moved. My system, you are so warm. My system. The system had goosebumps. You are the system, your whole family is the system. He Poen checked his hairstyle. It was not messy and very stylish. He also checked his clothes. They were yuppie and fashionable. He was wearing sunglasses and a mask, but he could still see his handsome outline. Good, he's perfect. The people who came to watch the movie couldn't help but take a detour. They wanted to stay away from this psychopath who was standing at the door with a mirror in her hand. He was afraid that Wei Wei Bai would not come, so he said that since it was a movie for her, she needed to watch similar movies. Dating usually started with watching a movie, followed by a meal to elevate the mood, and then finally, some sex. Wei Wei Bai saw He Poen from afar. Her footsteps were particularly hesitant. I really want to pretend that I don't know him. The system replied, me too. He Poen's sharp eyes saw by Weiwei, and he immediately rushed to her. Then, when she was unprepared, he lowered his head and kissed her hard on the face. They kissed through the mask. Weiwei Bai was scared and took 2 steps back. He Poen immediately took her hand and intimately intertwined their fingers. We're a loving couple now, so we have to act intimate. He Poen said cheekily. Weiwei Bai could only let him hold her hand. He Poen took the movie tickets he bought and entered the cinema. The movie was a romance movie. And it was a big tragedy. The female lead finally died of leukemia. The male lead was alone, desperate to live with the female lead's dream. Weiwei Bai saw this and suddenly felt that something was flowing down her nose. She quickly took out a tissue and wiped it. It was blood. The system calmly said, leukemia is like this. Nosebleeds. I'll help you stop the bleeding. Weiwei Bai was also calm. She was used to being sick and the nosebleed soon stopped. Chapter 130. He Poen was still scolding the director in his heart. Why did he shoot such a tragic movie? The name and trailer were so sweet. As a result, he saw the tissue in Weiwei Bai's hand, which was full of blood. He Poen. Did you have your period? Weiwei Bai and the system. Weiwei Bai pinched the tissue. No, I have a nosebleed. He Poen was worried. Why? Weiwei Bai, because of you. He Poen quickly took her hand. Let's go see a doctor. Weiwei Bai was expressionless. I'll drink a cup of herbal tea. He Poen said, your nose is bleeding. Maybe the heat is attacking your heart. He Poen pulled Weiwei Bai out of the cinema and the reporters swarmed them. He Poen, was your movie date sweet? Romantic. Do you need to buy flowers? I've brought them to you. I wish you 100 years of happiness and early birth. He Poen, such a good day, such a beautiful festival, you and your wife are a loving couple. Come, smile, I'll take a sweet photo of you. He Poen, my sister really wants me to ask for your autograph. He Poen remembered the reporters he arranged. He had already thought about it. He would let these reporters praise their love. When Weiwei Bai heard it, her mood would be better. Then they could go on a date happily. And once these reports were out, Weiwei Bai would be embarrassed to divorce him in the future. Bai Weiwei was stuffed with flowers. Her face was blank. What was going on? He Poen pulled down his mask and smiled proudly. Weiwei and I, another reporter suddenly asked, He Poen, some people suspect that you and Weiwei Bai are in a fake marriage. Is this true? He Poen's eyes were cold. The arranged reporters had a traitor. When he returned, he would definitely break both of Little Moo's legs. He Poen immediately laughed. How is that possible? Who would fake marriage for 5 years? The reporter persisted. But you and Weiwei Bai don't look sweet at all. You don't have chemistry. This blow to the heart had pierced a hole in it. He Poen wanted to argue, but he knew that the reporter was right. He wanted to reconcile, but Weiwei Bai didn't want it at all. And I also heard that you two live separately. Another blow. His heart was shattered into pieces. He Poen couldn't maintain the smile on his face. He tried to refute, of course not. We don't even have separate beds. How can we live separately? But I have photos to prove that Weiwei Bai stayed in XX hotel, not you. Weiwei Bai suddenly took a step forward and revealed a beautiful smile. You may have misunderstood. I appeared at the hotel because a foreign friend came here. I helped her check in, and the identity card is also mine. She finished, and her smile deepened. Today is the anniversary of our 5 years of meeting, so he insisted on dating me, just like a child. The sweetness and affection in this tone made people's hearts melt. He Poen only felt that his heart was beating very hard, as if something was about to come out. Weiwei Bai looked up and suddenly said to him, Poen, lower your head. He Poen bowed his head, and a soft kiss was printed on his lips. Bang! He Poen felt that his heartbeat broke the cold wall. He heard his own heart. He liked her. He liked her very much. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 90. To read the at, https://www.soshu.com to read at https://www.soshu.com. Text to read the at https://m-soshu.com. Chapter 131. System. What the hell? Did the favorability collapse? What happened to it? Was there really a problem with its internal calculation? Wei Wei Bai gave him a kiss. The smile on the corner of her mouth did not disappear, and the affection in her eyes was like starlight. Her fingers took the initiative to intertwine with his. Then she turned back to the reporter and said, "Sometimes, some love is not shown. We have known each other for 5 years, we have already passed the age where we have to tell the world about our love. If it weren't for your request today, I might have forgotten that I should give my husband a kiss to remember the day we met." The reporter blushed and said, "Then I wish you happiness." Wei Wei Bai smiled beautifully, "Thank you." Then Wei Wei Bai held the stunned He Poen, holding flowers in one hand and walking to the street. A reporter quickly took a picture of this. On the street, in the crowd, they held hands and intertwined their fingers. The two stared at each other, so sweet that it made people feel beautiful. When they walked to a place where there was no one, He Poen suddenly said, "Look up." Wei Wei Bai looked up. He Poen had already leaned over and kissed her. This kiss was a simple contact, but their noses were full of the breath of both sides. He Poen left her, breathing a little difficult. He blushed and turned his head away. "I also owe you a kiss, I'll return it to you." His hand gripped her even tighter. The system silently knocked on the host. "I may be infected with a virus, I need to kill it, and my work will be suspended for a while." Wei Wei Bai, virus? What happened? System. The favorability directly jumped to 90. It is very difficult to increase the favorability after that, and there is no big stimulation of life and death. Generally speaking, it is impossible to increase so quickly. Since coming to this plane, it had always suspected that there was a problem with its calculation of favorability. Every day, it was crazy. How did the favorability increase? Why did the favorability increase? The male lead was mad, but the favorability still increased. Obviously, there was nothing fart, but the favorability could increase to 90. This was not scientific. Wei Wei Bai chuckled. "You're not poisoned. You don't understand the heart of a narcissist." The system listened attentively. Wei Wei Bai, for narcissistic people, they love themselves the most in the world. Therefore, in the early stages, it was the hardest to increase the favorability because he didn't admit that he would fall in love with anyone. Even if she did like him, she would always deny it. But once he admits to liking someone, the feelings that he had been suppressing will erupt. He made a person who only loved him admit that he liked him. That would be admitting that there was another person who was as good-looking as him in his world. Of course, the favorability would soar. The system was expressionless. "You guys are really a match made in heaven. Narcissism meets narcissism, a match made in heaven. I'll admit that I'm not as good as you. Goodbye." Wei Wei Bai said, I won't see you out." He Poen suddenly said, "I've prepared a script for you. It's a movie you're going to shoot. You're the female lead." Wei Wei Bai held the flowers and asked, "Who's the male lead?" He Poen guiltily looked around and was silent for a while before saying, "It's me." Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but ask, "It's not a romantic drama, right?" He Poen was even more guilty, but his heart was uncomfortable because of her disapproval. He couldn't help but refute, "No." Wei Wei Bai said, "Well, then what's the drama?" He Poen was silent for a while before saying, "It's a drama where you're secretly in love with me, and I'm also secretly in love with you. T. Chapter 132. The movie that He Poen gave Wei Wei Bai was an entertainment industry romance film. And it had a special ability. When Wei Wei Bai got the script, she thought she was going to shoot a damn thunder drama. He Poen said seriously, "You haven't acted for a long time. I guess you are already out of practice. The entertainment industry background will make you more familiar with it. Romance films are more popular, and the special ability is also because of the need for novelty." Wei Wei Bai had no objection. Anyway, she only needed to act in a movie. Even if she acted in a tunnel war, it was fine. After getting rid of the reporters that day, Wei Wei Bai was dragged by He Poen to live with him. After all, the reporters were probably still waiting at the hotel to catch evidence of their fake marriage. They had been living together for a week, living in separate rooms. He Poen would take sweet selfies from time to time and post them on Weibo. Their popularity did not decrease but increased. The movie shooting was very smooth. The script was set in the entertainment industry, and the special ability was just a gimmick. The male lead basically did not need it. It was a story of love between the film emperor and the film empress. There was no secret love at all. The 90 points of favorability had been stagnant for a long time. The sequela of the sudden increase in favorability was that it did not increase for a long time. After filming, He Poen drove back with Wei Wei Bai. The city was brightly lit. For the first time, He Poen felt that the scenery was too beautiful. Wei Wei Bai was very sleepy, but the system said it was normal. In the end, even if she did not feel any pain, there were all kinds of weakness, fatigue, and physical deterioration. Wei Wei Bai asked the system, "If I can't finish the favorability in the end, will I die directly like this?" The system was silent for a long time. Yes. He Poen suddenly saw a jewelry store in front of him, and his mind moved. He drove the car to the door, then put on a hat and mask, and walked in with Wei Wei Bai. "Wedding rings," He Poen said to the clerk. When the shop assistant saw their clothes, she knew that they were fat sheep. She immediately took out the best diamond rings in her shop. It was so shiny that it could blind the eyes. He Poen looked around and finally saw a pair of rings that made his eyes light up. That big diamond was simply a reflection of his sparkling intentions. He immediately took out the pair of diamond rings, then took out the woman's ring and said to Wei Wei Bai, "Try it." When they got married, there was nothing. He almost couldn't remember what had happened to them at that time. All he could think of was the current Wei Wei Bai. She felt that the current her was the best. Wei Wei Bai seemed to hesitate. She looked at the ring in his hand and suddenly asked, "Are you proposing?" He Poen's thoughts were exposed, and his face turned red. "No, no, yes, I am proposing." He had nothing to lose. So what if it was a proposal? It was not something to be ashamed of. Wei Wei Bai pushed the ring in his hand back. "You can return it, or wait for the next person you like." He Poen's face turned white. His feelings were poured with ice water, and he was cold from head to toe. Wei Wei Bai's face was a little pale, but her expression was very serious. "He Poen, I really don't have any feelings for you, so we only get along because of the contract." The ring in He Poen's hand was like a knife, cutting his hand painfully. Wei Wei Bai turned and walked away indifferently. "So don't do these things that make people misunderstand in the future." Chapter 133. He Poen stood there in a daze. He suddenly felt a little wronged and a little angry. He had lowered his posture to this point. She still didn't appreciate it. For the first time, He Poen doubted himself and wondered if he was really cheap. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 85. System, although the drop in favorability saved my IQ, you can actually accept the ring and leave this plane as soon as possible. Wei Wei Bai was silent for a long time. "I think the ring is too ugly." It was so ugly that she could only go against her conscience and not accept it. That big diamond, those who didn't know would think that she was wearing a light bulb on her finger. She couldn't afford to lose face. He Poen felt that he couldn't spoil Wei Wei Bai. He wanted to have a cold war with her. He wanted to let her know that his feelings were not cheap and had dignity. Xiao Mu came to the crew with a lunchbox and saw He Poen looking at Wei Wei Bai with a sad face. His face was wrinkled like a resentful woman. Xiao Mu walked over, and "Ge, I came to give you and Wei Wei's sister a meal." He Poen snatched the lunchbox. "Don't give it to her, just let her starve to death." He was angry for the whole morning, but she didn't even look at him. He wanted to eat her lunchbox to vent his anger. Xiao Mu said bluntly, "Wei Wei's sister filmed all morning, it must be very hard. Her body can't stand it if she doesn't eat." He Poen stiffened for a moment, then walked to by Wei Wei's side with the lunchbox and handed it to her. "Eat." Wei Wei Bai was holding the script and was reading it. she said casually, put it down. She didn't look at him. He Poen was angry. He put the lunchbox in front of her, eat it or not, it's up to you. After that, he walked away angrily. Wei Wei Bai looked up. The indifference on her face disappeared and sadness slowly appeared. Suddenly she reached out and touched her nose. She stood up and then ran to a corner where there was no one. Xiao Mu saw it and felt that something was wrong. He immediately followed. Wei Wei Bai could not stop her nosebleeds. That was why she hated being sick the most. Just as she was about to ask the system to stop the bleeding, Xiao Mu's terrified voice sounded, Sister Wei Wei, what happened to you? Wei Wei Bai immediately explained, his Hiti. When Xiao Mu saw her haggard face and the fact that she seemed to have a lack of appetite and diarrhea recently, he made the connection. Are you sick? One of his relatives had a terrible disease and was like that. Wei Wei Bai's nosebleed finally stopped. She frowned, her eyes full of uneasiness. No. Xiao Mu was a little unsure. But my relative had leukemia and he was like this too. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. She bit her lip nervously. Seeing her like this, Xiao Mu immediately reacted. He shouted in disbelief, you don't really have a terminal illness, do you? Wei Wei Bai was so scared that she took 2 steps back. This loud voice, he had a microphone. She smiled bitterly and said in a weak voice, don't tell him, please. Xiao Mu anxiously wanted to advise something, but suddenly he froze. Because he saw that behind Wei Wei Bai, He Poen was standing there with a shocked face. Wei Wei Bai also noticed something. When she looked back, her whole person was stunned. He Poen took 2 steps forward, his footsteps were a little staggered. Then he rushed to Wei Wei Bai and pulled her out. He stuffed her into the car and drove directly to the hospital. The results of the examination soon came out. Leukemia in the end stage, there was no suitable bone marrow for transplant. He Poen felt like he was living in a nightmare. He suddenly woke up and looked at Wei Wei Bai sitting next to him. You said you didn't love me because of this. Terminal illness in the end stage, so she refused to love him again. Chapter 134. Wei Wei Bai didn't answer. She suddenly reached out and took out a tissue and covered her nose. The nosebleed was flowing again. When the condition worsened, it would be accompanied by a situation of bleeding. Anyway, the condition had already been discovered. Wei Wei Bai simply didn't let the system stop the bleeding and let the body react. She got up and rushed to the bathroom. He Poen was scared and immediately followed her into the women's bathroom. Bai Wei Wei looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was deathly pale and unsightly. When He Poen rushed over, he saw that her heart was like dead ashes. He didn't know what was in his heart. Regret, pain, or something else. Wei Wei. He felt that these 2 words were almost bitten out of his teeth. Wei Wei Bai threw away a lot of tissues and took out new ones. If the nosebleed wasn't stopped, it may continue to flow. She heard his voice and looked back. He Poen's eyes were red. He called again, Wei Wei. His voice was choked. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but laugh at herself. It's just being sick. Why are you so sad? You make it seem like you love me very much. Love her very much, love her very much. He Poen's voice trembled. I didn't know you were sick. I really didn't know. The beginning of the medical record was the day he filmed the night scene. At that time, she already knew that she was sick, so she called and cried for him to go back. How did he treat her at that time? Impatience, disgust, and also bad words. At that time, what kind of desperate mood did she have when she asked him to go back? Wei Wei Bai said coldly, enough, I don't need your sympathy. He Poen's heart was full of sadness. He wanted to say something, but he was used to being arrogant. When it came to comforting people, he didn't even know how to bend down. She was right. He was not modest enough. He was not mature. He was a bastard. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 90-92. He Poen lowered his voice. He was afraid of hurting her and said, we can go for chemotherapy. There must be a way. We can wait for the right bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai said expressionlessly, I don't need chemotherapy. He Poen was indignant. You must go. I will accompany you. I will help you find the right bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai looked at him strangely, as if it was the first time she had seen that kind of look in his eyes. She suddenly sneered, "Don't you hate me so much that you want me to die?" For the first time, He Poen hated his past self. He almost didn't dare to look at her. Wei Wei Bai threw away the tissue again. Without the system to stop the bleeding, the nosebleed continued to flow. He Poen saw her holding the tissue and suddenly reacted. He immediately rushed in front of her and carried her in his arms. "Damn it, you shouldn't be filming now. You should be hospitalized for treatment." Wei Wei Bai was startled by his actions and immediately said, "Wait, I don't need." He Poen immediately yelled angrily, "Shut up, you should listen to me now." Wei Wei Bai wanted to say again, then, He Poen was afraid that she would refuse to be hospitalized again. He hurriedly said, "Hating you is a thing of the past. Hating you is also a thing of the past. If there was a time machine, I would strangle myself to death." He ignored her struggle and ran to the doctor. "We want to be hospitalized. I want the best treatment." The doctor was shocked. "You both are sick. Do you both need treatment?" Chapter 135. He Poen didn't even care about his image and roared directly, "You are the one who is sick. My wife needs to be hospitalized. You don't care about human life. My wife is so sick and you don't force her to be hospitalized." After a panic, Wei Wei Bai was forced to the hospital bed by He Poen. Because of the nosebleed, the doctor directly transfused blood for treatment. After a long time, the blood stopped flowing and the situation stabilized. The doctor said, "The patient's desire to survive is not high, and the condition has deteriorated to the point of no return. We have tried our best, but she refused chemotherapy. We can't force her." Without chemotherapy, there was no suitable bone marrow to transplant. She was just waiting for death. He Poen felt that he was living in a vacuum. Everything seemed so absurd. Even his breathing seemed to be deprived. This feeling of suffocation made him feel at a loss. Wei Wei Bai was lying in the hospital bed and looked very fragile, as if she would break at any time. But her expression was very calm, as if she was not the one who died. He Poen's lips trembled for a while before he asked, "Why not chemotherapy? If he allowed his condition to worsen like this, it would be suicide." Wei Wei Bai was stunned and said weakly, "It's not necessary. No one will care if I die." These words were like a knife, stabbing He Poen's whole body. "Who said no one cares? I care. Now you are under my care." Bai Weiwei's face was sad, but it wasn't for herself. She even looked a little scared. "He Poen, you look like you are in love with me." Wei Wei Bai finished, then turned her face away and laughed at herself. "This is my shameless imagination." He Poen was stupefied, but he did not have a trace of refute. It turned out that she didn't believe at all. Did he fall in love with her? Wei Wei Bai looked at him. "Why aren't you angry?" He Poen knew what she meant. If he didn't like her, he would refute angrily. He had always been so arrogant and did not give people any way out. But he was powerless to refute. He had already fallen in love with her, so how could he say that he didn't love her? Wei Wei Bai's voice finally sounded panicked. "You can't possibly fall in love with me." He Poen felt that these words completely blew him up. He reached out and grabbed her shoulder, forcing her to look up at him. "Wei Wei Bai, listen to me. I'll repeat myself. I hate you because of the past. Now, today, at this moment, every minute, every second, I like you." He Poen's words paused as he looked into Bai Weiwei's sad and scared eyes. He said seriously, "No, I love you." Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 95. Wei Wei Bai finally couldn't take it anymore. She pushed him away. "Don't say such things when I'm about to die." He Poen was worried that she wouldn't believe him. "Don't you know me?" They were cold-blooded, selfish, and did not know how to think for others. "If I didn't like you, I would buy firecrackers to celebrate your death." Wei Wei Bai, you really know yourself. He Poen was so anxious that he didn't know what to do. "So you believe me, okay? I really fell in love with you." Wei Wei Bai trembled. "How can you fall in love with me?" He Poen felt like his heart had been dug out. This kind of pain was really not bearable. He said sadly, why can't I? Falling in love with someone is not something I can control. Wei Wei Bai suddenly reached out and covered her face. Her tears still flowed. How can you fall in love with me at this time? How can you fall in love with me when I give up everything and can't take it back? He Poen, you are so cruel. Why didn't you fall in love with me earlier? Read the full text. Download the full text. Read the full text. Chapter 136. He Poen could hear the despair in her voice. He reached out to comfort her, but his hand had not yet reached out. Wei Wei Bai had already turned around and laid down. You go, I need to calm down. At this time, He Poen was at a loss as to what to do. But seeing her thin back, almost disappearing weakness, his nose was sour, and something fell from his eyes. He Poen endured the sourness in his throat and said, then I'll go outside, call me if you need anything. He Poen finished and looked at her deeply. Then he went out and just closed the door of the ward. There were doctors and nurses pushing a medical emergency bed with a person lying on it, covered with a white cloth. The doctor sighed, how sad the family will be if they can't be saved at such a young age. The nurse said, there is no other way. We have tried our best. If we can't, we can't. The doctor and the nurse walked away. He Poen leaned against the door and finally couldn't stand it. A huge wave of sadness surged, and he couldn't hold it anymore. He bent down and wiped his face with his hands, but the tears couldn't be controlled and flowed down the gaps between his fingers. Why did he fall in love with her now? When she was just sick, before she gave up treatment, what did he do? It was he who broke her hope with his own hands. It was he who didn't want her. It was he who pushed her into this kind of hell. He Poen, you are an idiot. Xiao Mu rushed to the hospital and saw He Poen's tearful face. Nge. Xiao Mu looked at him in surprise. He Poen looked up with red eyes and suddenly said, give me a punch. Xiao Mu's face looked like his brain was broken. How can I hit you? He Poen said fiercely, why do you talk so much nonsense? If you don't hit me, I'll deduct all your wages next month. As soon as he finished speaking, Little Mu punched him without hesitation. He Poen was punched. Although it hurt, it also sobered up a lot. Xiao Mu asked worriedly, Nge, are you okay? Do you want to punch me again? He Poen gritted his teeth, no need. Then he turned and left. Xiao Mu asked, Nge, where are you going? He Poen didn't hesitate at all. Go check the bone marrow match. If only his bone marrow was suitable for her. Meanwhile, Wei Wei Bai, who was lying on the hospital bed, was typing on the system. Can all of you be discharged? I hate hospitals. She really hated it. She had been dealing with hospitals all her life, so when she saw white things, she would feel flustered. The system's voice was dull. Just stay here. The movie is almost done anyway, and the side quests are almost done. Wei Wei Bai noticed that something was wrong with its voice. Why are you crying? The system made a tearing sound. Woo woo, so tragic. How could it be so tragic? Bai Wei Wei couldn't figure it out. What are you doing? The system snorted. After wiping its nose, it said, reciting Tang poems, and then crying, I couldn't help but tear a few pages of paper to wipe my tears. Wei Wei Bai, you're memorizing Tang poems? The system was afraid that she wouldn't believe it, so it immediately spread out the piece of paper on which it used to wipe its nose and read, 10 years of life and death, if you don't think about it, you won't forget it. Thousands of miles of lonely graves. Woo woo woo, it's even worse. Wei Wei Bai. Is this a Tang poem? Is this not a song poem? The bone marrow match was unsuccessful. Although it was expected, He Poen could hardly stand still. The doctor had given an ultimatum. The speed of the deterioration of the condition was amazing. Wei Wei Bai could die at any time. Chapter 137. Wei Wei Bai still refused chemotherapy. She asked to finish the movie. There was only one ending left to be filmed. He Poen said coldly, no, you need treatment. No one thought that Wei Wei Bai's situation would worsen. Her body was so weak that it was not suitable for chemotherapy. He Poen gave up all activities and desperately tried to find a suitable bone marrow. He had been in the hospital, trying to extend Wei Wei Bai's life. He didn't dress up during this time. His most cherished hairstyle was messy, his clean chin was full of stubble, there were dark circles on his face, but his eyes were unusually quiet and fierce. He used to be arrogant and charming. Now his eyes were so deep that it made people's legs weak. Wei Wei Bai had lost a lot of weight during this time. She touched her face. I have become very ugly. He Poen took a fruit knife and fiercely peeled an apple. You are very beautiful. Who dares to say you are ugly? I will peel them. Wei Wei Bai smiled perfunctorily. I just want to finish my last movie. I am afraid. He Poen peeled the apple into the core. Don't be afraid, I am here. Don't say one, even 100 movies will be yours. Wei Wei Bai did not speak and was silent. The silent He Poen panicked. The doctor said that her desire to survive was not high, so he had to do something to make her happy. But he didn't know how to make her happy. If filming could make her happy, why not? He immediately contacted the director and began to revise the script. There were some plots, but they were all deleted and skipped directly to the end. On the day of filming, He Poen circled around Wei Wei Bai. The ending was perfect, very good. The film Emperor's ability was to share life, which could only be used once in a lifetime. Originally, the female lead was dying because of a car accident. He divided his remaining life in half and gave half to her. They could live together and die together. The last scene was a wedding scene, and they needed to try on the wedding dress. Wei Wei Bai felt weak in her joints, but she couldn't say how uncomfortable it was. The wedding dress was specially chosen by He Poen at the wedding dress shop. It was too late to order it, so he could only choose ready-made clothes. Wei Wei Bai was helped by a female assistant to change her clothes. He Poen, who was dressed in a bridegroom's suit, looked anxious. He was still calling the people he could contact to help find a suitable bone marrow for Wei Wei Bai. For this matter, he used all the connections he could. Just as he was making the 8th call, the door of the dressing room opened. Wei Wei Bai was carefully helped out by someone. He Poen looked up and the words in his mouth disappeared. For a moment, his mind was blank. She wore a wedding dress and slowly walked towards him. Her veil was draped over her shoulders, and for a moment, the lights in the shop shone on her beautiful face, giving it a dazzling halo. He Poen heard his heartbeat and it was out of control. Wei Wei Bai looked at him. Her eyes were bright and watery. He Poen felt that he was finished. He thought, how could there be someone in this world who looked better than him? Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 97. Wei Wei Bai heard the reminder and couldn't help but smile. He Poen was hit by her smile and his heart was moved. It wasn't that she looked better than him, but that the whole world added together couldn't be as beautiful as her. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 98. Wei Wei Bai looked puzzled. So He Poen is a wedding dress lover? This can increase his favorability. Teether. Chapter 138. After shooting the movie, Wei Wei Bai heard the system prompt that the side mission had been completed. Bai Wei Wei calculated that the time was almost up, the 3 months were almost up. He Poen was also in a terrible state. He was going crazy looking for a suitable bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai's condition deteriorated too fast. He Poen didn't dare to sleep. He was worried that if he closed his eyes, Wei Wei Bai would be gone when he opened his eyes. He didn't believe in ghosts and gods. When he saw Xiao Mu running to the temple to worship, he didn't stop him and even reimbursed Xiao Mu for the incense. Wei Wei Bai didn't care about the strategy. She didn't expect that the system would help her block the discomfort. Her body would be so weak that she couldn't get out of bed. He Poen walked in from outside the ward and saw Wei Wei Bai with her eyes closed quietly. He felt sour in his heart, but he showed a smile. He didn't want Wei Wei Bai to know how bad her situation was. He Poen bent down and whispered in her ear, Wei Wei. Wei Wei Bai opened her eyes and saw He Poen's close-up face. She was almost scared. The system, this idiot, often didn't remind her of the arrival of the male lead. He Poen saw that she was awake, took out his and said, let's take a picture. Wei Wei Bai frowned. Although she was narcissistic, She was particularly self-aware. Her current state must be ugly. If she took a picture, wouldn't it leave a black history? Poen saw her reluctance and suddenly said, "Do you know why there are seams in your fingers?" As he spoke, he picked up her hand and intertwined his fingers with hers, their fingers intertwined tightly. "That's to wait for another person to fill it." Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. "There are no seams. Where do the fingers come from? Isn't that just a piece of meat pie?" Poen laughed. "Ha ha 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 ha. Yes, you are so humorous, so funny, why don't you laugh?" Wei Wei Bai looked at him with a look of concern. What to do? The male lead's favorability rose, but his IQ plummeted. Poen suddenly reached out and caught her off guard. Wei Wei Bai was ticklish and burst out laughing. Poen, who was already prepared, immediately raised his phone. He smiled sweetly and kissed her cheek, and a photo was taken. Poen laughed. "Jokes don't work, I can only use physical attacks." Then, he posted on Weibo, "Today, I'm still as sweet as ever with my baby. She's sick, but she's always been optimistic. There was still no match for the bone marrow, and I tried my best to find one." He had a lot of fans, so it would be much faster to use the human wave tactic to find the bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai couldn't wait any longer. After Poen posted on Weibo, he gave Wei Wei Bai a bowl of fish soup and fed it to her. Wei Wei Bai felt that Poen's transformation from a rabid dog to a loyal dog was completely smooth. She took a sip of the fish soup and could see that his eyes were sparkling with happiness. Wei Wei Bai suddenly said softly, "The Golden Silk Awards recently nominated you for Best Actor again." Poen had already won many Best Actor awards. But the Golden Silk Awards were different. This award was called the Eastern Oscar. After winning it, Poen was basically invincible in China. Poen didn't care and said, "There are hundreds of awards waiting for me every year. If I have to participate in every award, I don't need to film anymore." The company was crazy. It didn't matter if he didn't film or work for a while. After all, the fans he had accumulated over the years wouldn't disappear in a few days. But the Golden Silk Awards must be won. Chapter 139. That was a super award. But for the current Poen, not to mention the Golden Silk Award, even if it was the world's most beautiful award, he wouldn't go. Wei Wei Bai raised her eyes and looked at him for a few seconds before saying seriously, "I want to see you standing on the podium." Poen's action of feeding her soup paused. He seemed to be considering whether to leave her for a while to receive the award. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was probably the company calling to urge him. Poen didn't want Wei Wei Bai to worry. He put down the bowl and said that he was going to answer the phone and went out. After he finished the call, he must turn off his phone. Why were so many people disturbing them? Poen looked at the caller ID. It was Xiao Mu. When the call was connected, Xiao Mu's voice was unusually happy. "And GE, Sister Wei Wei can be saved." Poen's ears rang. The emotion that came up in his heart was not ecstasy. It was humble gratitude. At this moment, he felt that he was as small as a speck of dust. He couldn't bear such a huge surprise. Poen turned off the phone and walked into the ward. He saw Wei Wei Bai's quiet side profile. After she fell ill, she had been quiet. She didn't cry out in pain, nor did she complain. Poen walked over, bent down to hold her face, and looked deeply at her. Wei Wei Bai was stunned and heard Poen whisper, "No matter how I look at you, you are the most beautiful." Wei Wei Bai blushed. Although it was true, it was still embarrassing to hear others say so. Poen smiled, "I will go to receive the award." Wei Wei Bai kindly reminded him, "You are just a nominee. If he didn't win the Best Actor award, wouldn't he be embarrassed?" Poen was full of confidence. "I am the best actor, definitely." This burst of confidence, worthy of Poen. On the night of the award, Poen wore a black suit. It was a simple suit with no other decorations. It was very different from his previous flamboyant appearance. However, he was much more handsome than before. Even if Poen didn't know how to act, his face alone could firmly occupy a place in the entertainment industry. Wei Wei Bai's spirit improved a lot. She sat up and said to Poen, "Your tie is crooked. I'll fix it for you." He Poen walked in front of her and bowed very politely. He was afraid that she wouldn't be able to touch him, so he deliberately stretched his neck. Wei Wei Bai reached out to help him adjust his tie, and then her fingers suddenly pulled down the tie. He Poen was not on guard and bowed his head. She had already kissed his lips. This kiss retreated as soon as it touched, but it made He Bo feel as calm as a drum. Wei Wei Bai smiled and loosened his tie. "You're the best actor. No one can compare to you." Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 99. There are only 3 hours left before the host leaves. The confident look on He Poen's face was bright enough to blind people. He said, "Wait for me to come back, I'll give you a big surprise." Wei Wei Bai nodded and watched him leave. Her mouth whispered, "Goodbye, He Poen." The Golden Silk Award ceremony was broadcasted live on TV, so Wei Wei Bai could watch it. He Poen was already sitting in the audience. Among all the people present, he was the most eye-catching. So the camera often showed him. "Wei Wei Bai, it's almost time." The system looked at the time. "It's almost time. There's only 1 hour left. If you don't get enough favorability, you'll die. Wei Wei Bai, let's wait a little longer." Chapter 140. She had just finished speaking when on TV, the host of the award ceremony announced the Best Actor Award, this year's Golden Silk Award for Best Actor, He Poen. With last year's movie, He Poen easily defeated everyone and won the Best Actor Award. He Poen went on stage, took the trophy, and directly said his thoughts, "There is nothing to thank, it's all nonsense. I came on stage to confess. Today is the 5th year I have known my wife. I have done a lot of bad things before. I am a fool who has no sense of responsibility except for my beauty." The audience was in an uproar. Wei Wei Bai in front of the TV and the system. Except for his beauty, he has nothing? This boasting is really fresh and unconventional. He Poen's eyes were serious, and his voice was low. He looked at the camera as if he was looking at someone. "But from today on, I will do my best to give you what you want. You want me to grow up, then I will be mature. You want me to be modest, then I will bend. You don't want me to make too many enemies, then I will be a man who everyone loves." He Poen said this, his lips slightly curved, and his delicate eyes overflowed with a gentle light. He stepped back a few steps and suddenly gave a gentleman's salute to the camera. His words were soft and tender. "So, please love me again, Wei Wei Bai." No matter how many people were present, no matter how many people were watching the TV, among thousands of people, he only saw one person. The system sighed, "There are only 15 minutes left." Wei Wei Bai also sighed, "If He Poen is the attacker, it is estimated that he will win every battle." The system was surprised, "Are you tempted?" Wei Wei Bai strangely shook her head, "I don't feel anything." The system breathed a sigh of relief, "I thought I was malfunctioning." Wei Wei Bai heard something wrong. "What do you mean by malfunctioning?" The system said very easily, "I turned on the host's emotional deprivation device. As long as you are in the state of attack, your feelings will be automatically deprived, and after you leave these planes, your memory will be blurred." Wei Wei Bai, what the hell? Why didn't I know about it? No wonder she was so rational. She thought that she had already cultivated into an old monster who would not be moved. Was that not the case? Ha ha ha, isn't that a small matter? It's automatically turned on because it's afraid that the host will have a split personality due to too many strategies, so it can't be turned off. Wei Wei Bai was speechless. It would be a small matter if she was killed by the system one day. She glanced at the TV and saw that He Poen had left after receiving the award. The place to receive the award was very close to the hospital. It was only a 10-minute walk. She guessed that He Poen was on his way to the hospital. Wei Wei Bai took out her phone and called him. He Poen was driving. He immediately connected and answered with headphones. "Wei Wei, I'm going back. Wait for me," He Poen said excitedly. She didn't know that a suitable bone marrow had been found. When the bone marrow donor arrives tomorrow, she will be saved. Wei Wei Bai laughed. "Poen, I lied when I said I didn't love you." He Poen was stunned. He had never heard such moving words. Wei Wei Bai's voice, through the phone, was a little weak. But it did not hide the gentleness. How can I not love you? Poen felt that the whole world was like fireworks, so beautiful that he didn't know how to drive. Ding, the male lead's favorability is 100. The host has completed the task, leaving in 1 minute. Chapter 141. Wei Wei Bai heard the reminder and continued, I just don't want you to see me sick, so I want to push you away. I don't want chemotherapy because I know you don't like ugly people. Poen was moved and distressed. No matter what you look like, you are beautiful in my eyes. His car had rushed into the hospital parking lot. He opened the door and rushed into the hospital. Poen had never been in such a good mood before. Wei Wei, did you know? I chose a ring again. This time you will definitely like it. The diamond is pink. I bought the biggest one. Wei Wei Bai smiled and said, really? But I don't like diamonds that are too big. Poen immediately changed his mind, I bought a small one. No matter how small it is, it will look good. Countdown to departure, 8, 7, 6, Wei Wei Bai felt a familiar darkness come, and her voice lowered, I'm sleepy, 3, 2, 1. The host is ready to leave the plane. The host successfully left the plane. Poen had run to the door of the ward. He stopped, tidied up his hair and clothes at the door, and calmed his rapid breathing. Sleep if you are sleepy, I will wake you up with a kiss. He said with a happy smile, and then he opened the door. Wei Wei Bai was lying quietly on the hospital bed, her slipped to the ground. She was pale and terrible, as if she had disappeared. Poen's smile froze, and his footsteps stopped. He tried to call, Wei Wei? She didn't answer, she was so quiet that she didn't even breathe. Poen sat next to her, then held her hand and clasped his fingers. You see, I won an award. Am I not very good? Our movie can also win an award. Next year, the two of us will appear at the Golden Silk Awards together. At that time, I will be the best actor and you will be the best actress. Everyone will envy us for being a match made in heaven. In the future, we will be the best-looking couple every year. The most loving couple will definitely be the best every year. Poen said with a smile, in the movie, we are also a loving couple. If I also have the ability of the male lead, I will definitely share half of my life with you. Who told you to be in such poor health? When the doctor and Xiao Mu came, Poen was still talking to Wei Wei Bai. When you are better, we will get married again. We have to do a grand wedding ceremony. I have customized a wedding dress for you. You can wear it soon. The doctor went over to check. The moment he touched her, he knew that she was gone. Mr. She has. Poen immediately became fierce and violent. Get lost, my wife is resting, don't touch her. Xiao Mu cried, and Sister Wei Wei is gone. Poen nervously held by Wei Wei's hand. Who's gone? She's still sleeping well. Tomorrow, she will be healthy again tomorrow. Xiao Mu went forward to pull him. And Poen fiercely pushed Xiao Mu away. I am very calm now. Is the soup for Wei Wei ready? She doesn't eat much now. If she doesn't eat more at night, she will be hungry. Xiao Mu suddenly stepped forward, grabbed Poen's collar with one hand, and punched him. Poen was beaten back a few steps and hit the wall. Xiao Mu burst into tears. And I am sorry for your loss. Poen was shocked. He looked at Xiao Mu blankly, as if he didn't know where he was. He pushed Xiao Mu away, stumbled to the bed, and reached out to touch Wei Wei Bai's cold face. Then he bowed his head and kissed her lips that had no temperature. I will kiss you, and you will wake up. Fast crossing system, my God, come here. Fast crossing system, my God, come here / fast crossing system, my God, come here. Fast crossing system, my God, come here. Below to record this reading. Fast crossing system, my God, come here. Chapter 142. He said in a trembling voice, tears dripping onto her pale face. I'll kiss you, and you'll wake up. He kissed her again, but she refused to wake up. Wei Wei, you can't bear not to love me, and you certainly can't bear to see me sad. Poen pleaded. I'm so sad now, Please wake up. He Poen had never been so humble, and he had never begged so desperately. He begged her to wake up. But Wei Wei Bai didn't have any breath, and the heartbeat in her chest had already stopped. Xiao Mu, as well as the doctors and nurses on the side, couldn't bear to watch. But the routine still had to be done. The doctor tried to persuade him, Mr. He, I know you are very sad, but she is gone, you don't have to be too sad. He Poen's face was pale. He seemed to suddenly wake up, and the helplessness in his eyes made people feel distressed. He opened his mouth to say something, but the despair in the depths of his chest surged out. He looked at Wei Wei Bai, then suddenly reached for the fruit knife on the table next to him and sent it to his chest. Xiao Mu was frightened and rushed over, blocking the knife with his hand. But He Poen's strength was too great, and the knife didn't fly away, but changed direction and directly stabbed into his abdomen. Blood spread out. He Poen didn't feel the pain at all. The doctor rushed over and wanted to give him first aid, but he stretched out his bloody hand and grabbed Wei Wei Bai's fingers. This was good, they could be together forever. The darkness came, and he suddenly woke up, and there was a spasm of pain in his stomach. Yi Yuxuan looked around blankly, and his fingers were stiff as if he wanted to grab someone. He frowned, and his face was terrible. In the quiet room, only a small lamp emitted a dim yellow light. It was not a ward, and there was no body when she died. Yi Yuxuan felt the severe pain in his stomach again. He ran into the bathroom and retched in the sink. This feeling was too uncomfortable. Even if he was shot with a real gun, he wouldn't be in so much pain. For the first time, intense emotional fluctuations appeared on Yi Yuxuan's expressionless face. It was regret, discomfort, or attachment. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, he finally managed to calm himself down. His expression also returned to normal. However, his stomach was still uncomfortable. His body was very healthy, and he usually had regular checkups. There was nothing wrong with him. It was even more impossible for him to have gastric problems. But just now, he actually felt like he had really stabbed a knife into his abdomen. Yi Yuxuan knew that he was abnormal, but since it didn't affect his normal life, he didn't probe further. Now, it was affecting his body. This dream, that woman, what was it? When Yi Yuxuan heard his phone ring, he thought it was about work. Sometimes, when there was a major mistake at work, people from the company would call in the middle of the night. Yi Yuxuan picked up the phone and found that it was Qin Qiu. Why was he calling so late at night? As soon as the call connected, Qin Qiu's voice roared, "Not good, your fiancé has been kidnapped." Fiancé? Kidnapped? Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. So what, such a small thing? Qin Qiu, fuck, your future wife's life or death is unknown. She has been kidnapped, and you have such a reaction. No, I forgot that you are an emotionally deficient, mentally disabled child. Your lack of reaction is a reaction. Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Chapter 143. Qin Qiu, you have to do something. Since Wei Wei Bai became your fiancé, you didn't get any benefits. She has to bear all the troubles. Now, when she was in a coma, she was kidnapped. Would it kill you to raise your hand to save her? Yi Yuxuan was about to speak when his stomach spasmed again. He groaned in pain. Qin Qiu was a doctor and immediately noticed that something was wrong. What's wrong with you? Yi Yuxuan took a few deep breaths and the pain disappeared. It's nothing, just a stomach ache. Qin Qiu's face was full of question marks. Don't you have a diamond stomach? How can you have a stomach ache? Yi Yuxuan's physical fitness was exploding. It was very abnormal for such a person to feel pain. Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. Maybe I really have a problem. I'll check my body again tomorrow. Qin Qiu was anxious. Now is not the time to talk about this. Are you going to save your fiancé? Yi Yuxuan's stomach ache could be delayed, but Wei Wei Bai couldn't be delayed. Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. She died because she was weak. This kind of woman can't live if she marries into the Yi family. Let her be eliminated naturally. What the hell was eliminated naturally? Qin Qiu was mad. Then you'll be eliminated naturally. Check my ass. If you don't save her, I won't talk nonsense with you. Goodbye. Qin Qiu's words couldn't leave a trace in Yi Yuxuan's heart. He lay back in bed and rationally calculated the workload for tomorrow. He didn't know if he was really tired, but he fell asleep at once. But the dream was still going on. The movie King's Secret Little Wife 7 years later. At the award ceremony, He Poen smiled gently and received the most important award in his life. He became the first domestic actor to win the highest international award. In the past 7 years, he has changed from being flamboyant to being mature and low-key. He has also polished himself from a diamond to a jade, making people who meet him feel like they are bathed in a spring breeze. Xiao Mu was already married, but he was still his assistant. His fans, who were young and frivolous, grew up with him and became loyal old fans. He had fulfilled his promise to Wei Wei Bai. He was no longer insensible and would not easily offend others. He treated everyone seriously and humbly. He was no longer narcissistic. The only thing that didn't change was his longing and love for her. After He Poen returned to China, he still worked hard and never slacked off for a single day. Every time she returned from filming, she would go to Wei Wei Bai's grave and sit down with her. She would tell her what she had done today and what award she had won. 7 years ago, the knife he used to commit suicide was off the mark, but he didn't die in the end. Xiao Mu said to him on the bed, "Sister Wei Wei wants you to be well. When she was sick, she kept rejecting you because she was afraid that you would fall in love with her." He Poen's face was pale and he just sat there sluggishly. After Wei Wei Bai's death, his world also stagnated. Xiao Mu looked at him sadly. "I have seen the things she collected. If she liked you on stage before she was sick, then after she was sick, she really loved you now. Only a person who worshipped He Poen as a star would crazily collect his things. After she was sick, Wei Wei Bai didn't collect his things, but more like she loved the realistic He Poen. That was why she cared so much about whether he was well. Wei Wei's sister tried her best to be well in her last days. You shouldn't let her down." Chapter 144. Xiao Mu felt that he was almost unable to continue. "You have failed her for so many years. After she died, are you going to continue to fail her?" This sentence finally knocked into He Poen's heart. Xiao Mu looked at him in surprise. He Poen's empty eyes were filled with tears. He suddenly leaned down and a heart-wrenching cry sounded. That was the first sound he made after not eating or drinking for many days after Wei Wei Bai's death. This cry was devoid of any form. It was filled with pain and the despair of losing a loved one. Then he began to return to normal. He began to work hard to learn how to be a man who did not fail her. 7 years had passed since he started learning. After He Poen finished another movie, he returned to the apartment late at night. The apartment was dark and empty. His heart was like an abyss, empty and lost. He opened the wine cabinet, took out the wine and began to drink. Outside the window, the lights were bright. He stood in the window, alone. He Poen drank too much wine and his stomach hurt again. He leaned against the wall, holding the bottle and drunkenly clutching his stomach. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something. His eyes lit up and he immediately took out his phone and dialed a familiar number. The phone was connected. He Poen said with grievance, "Wei Wei, my stomach hurts." There was a moment of silence. He Poen was afraid that she would not believe him and emphasized again, "It really hurts. I can't find the medicine. Can you help me find it?" On the other side of the phone, Xiao Mu's voice came, "Nge, are you drunk?" Wei Wei Bai's phone number had always been charged and kept by Xiao Mu, so it did not become a dead number. He Poen only knew that occasionally, when he was drunk, he would call Wei Wei Bai. He Poen heard Xiao Mu's voice and was stunned. His voice calmed down, "I'm fine. You go rest." After he finished speaking, he hung up. Then he reached out and rubbed his face hard. Finally, he couldn't help but tremble. "Wei Wei, I'm in pain. Why haven't you come to comfort me?" He heard that the dead would come back on the anniversary of their death. Today was the anniversary of her death. If she came back and saw him like this, her heart would definitely ache. Then, she would appear and hug him. He had waited for so long, but she had never come back even once. He was tired, very tired. 1 year later. Xiao Mu placed the bouquet in front of Wei Wei Bai and He Poen's tombs. Brother En, according to your will, put your urn together with Sister Wei Wei. Your property has also been donated according to your wishes. He Poen's stomach cancer was in the advanced stage, and there was no surgery or treatment at all. Before he died, there was no fear at all. Instead, he was very happy because he could finally die. Xiao Mu looked at the pictures on their tombstones. Unlike others, this was a group photo. This photo was taken when the two of them were watching a movie and Wei Wei Bai was holding hands with him as they walked down the street. At that time, they were in their prime. He lowered his eyes and looked at her affectionately. She hugged the flowers and smiled sweetly. Even if they were dead, they would still be the most good-looking couple. Xiao Mu still remembered that when he got this photo from the reporter, he signed 100 autographs for the reporter's sister. Xiao Mu looked at the photo and said, Brother En, you will definitely find Sister Wei Wei. I wish you happiness. Received 1 love point, please choose your wish. Wei Wei Bai heard the familiar reminder and immediately said, lifespan. Lifespan extended by 15 days. Does the host choose to wake up now? Chapter 145. Wei Wei Bai said without thinking, yes, wait, 15 days? Wasn't it a month? It had shrunk by half. Was it corrupted by the system? The system took out a calculator and said, during your leukemia period, you used a total of 17 bottles of painkillers, 3 doses of spirit-boosting pills, 6 pieces of clear facial masks without makeup, and a tube of hair-fluttering effect. You used a total of 11 days and 23 hours of lifespan. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. How come I didn't know I used these? You didn't even tell me. The system flipped through its collection. I was worried that you wouldn't buy them if I reminded you. Wei Wei Bai snorted. Do I look like such a stingy person? I'll give you every cent that I should have spent. The system said, it's not a matter of being stingy, it's a reminder to drive you away. Wei Wei Bai frowned. Reminder? Why would this thing drive me away? Seeing that she didn't believe it, the system immediately cleared its throat and said in a deep and sexy voice, Ding, dear host, you're in so much pain that your eyes are rolling back, your legs are twitching, and your whole body is trembling like a grass mud horse running on the grassland. Do you need painkillers when you're dancing in the wind? Wei Wei Bai, the system continued with its affectionate voice, Ding, dear host, you're ugly, you're very ugly. You're so ugly that you're beyond the limits of human imagination, so ugly that you're beyond the light years of the universe, so ugly that you're patriotic and professional, so ugly that you're unyielding and rugged. Do you need the moisturizing effect of a facial mask? Once it works, you'll get a discount on 3, and 6 will make you a beauty. Wei Wei Bai. 6. The system said loudly, your long hair is greasy after 3 days of not washing, your scalp can be seen after 6 days of not washing, and your hair looks bleak after half a month of not washing. Hair fluttering effect serum, once it works, it lasts for a year. Dear host, please make your purchase immediately, and you'll get a hemorrhoid cream within 3 seconds. Wei Wei Bai, by my ass, get lost. The system helplessly spread its hands. You didn't believe me. Wei Wei Bai, wait, there's still 3 days and 1 hour left, where did it go? The system hesitated for a moment before saying in a coquettish voice, well, I bought some sunflower seeds and fruits for you. Bai Wei Wei scratched her head in confusion. Snacks? What kind of snacks would cost her life? Was it food? The system coughed. Your wish fulfilled, you'll immediately wake up. Bai Wei Wei's head spun, and her eyelids were frighteningly heavy. She gasped in shock and struggled to open her eyes, only to find that she was not in the hospital. She was strapped into the driver's seat of a car, which was moving forward at an alarming speed. In the driverless car, Bai Wei Wei was tied to the driver's seat. In front of her was a cliff, and below the cliff was the sea. Bai Wei Wei was speechless for a moment before she remembered how she should have reacted. She shouted, "Holy shit, help." The system dug its ears. No one will hear you even if you scream yourself hoarse. Wei Wei Bai couldn't take it anymore. Why do I look like this every time I wake up? She was poisoned the last time, and this time she was in a car accident. Was she destined to die a horrible death? The system cleared its throat and recited in a loud voice, "Ding, host, Have you reached the crossroads of your life? You are at a loss, wandering around. Are you hurt all over, but you still look at poetry and the distance? Are you tied up like a hairy crab, hanging on a broken carriage that only costs $108,000? Are you going in the direction of the sea in search of your ideals? Full protection, only 15 days of lifespan. You'll get a gift when you buy it. Dear, do you want to die or live? Weiwei Bai, I want to die. At https://www.soshu.com to read the full article at https://www.soshu.com to read the full article at https://m.soshu.com// to make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click save at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 146. System, Ding. The host has purchased a comprehensive protective cover. Please enjoy. Weiwei Bai was going crazy. What's the difference between this and forcing me to buy? Enle stood on the lighthouse with a pair of binoculars in his hands. He looked at the car that had lost control and was rushing towards the cliff. It was Weiwei Bai, whom he had kidnapped from the hospital. Bai Changyang had already suspected Bai Yaro, so the Bai family's bodyguards had also entered the hospital. However, he did not suspect Enle. Furthermore, Enle was in charge of the entire Bai family's security. It was easy for him to create a Weiwei Bai. Enle watched as the car rushed out of the cliff and sneered. The car flew out of the cliff. Fly. Fly. Fly into the sky. Enle rubbed his eyes calmly and looked at the binoculars again. The car was soaring above the vast sea. That ecstatic posture made it look like a seagull. Enle was speechless. At that moment, his outlook on life was destroyed. The second-hand car that he bought was actually a modified private jet. Enle's phone rang, and his fingers trembled as he answered the call. Bai Yaro asked excitedly, "Did the car fall into the sea?" Enle replied, "No, it flew into the sky." Bai Yaroiro's smile froze. "What?" Enle was about to continue speaking when he suddenly heard the sound of something approaching. He raised his head and saw the car flying towards him. With a loud crash, the car crashed into the lighthouse and crushed Enle underneath. The scene of an accident was born. Weiwei Bai sat in the car in a daze. Was this the comprehensive protective cover? Could it be that she had transmigrated from the Harry Potter world? Before Weiwei Bai could regain her senses, the car door was pulled open. Weiwei Bai raised her head and was shocked. A man with a head full of blood and a pair of sinister eyes took out a gun. Weiwei Bai was tied to the seat and could not move. "All of you, the protection is still working, right?" The system was calm. "It's not working." "Weiwei Bai, I can't take such a direct answer." Enle wiped the blood off his face. His wound was still bleeding, so he couldn't see clearly. However, it was enough to kill the immobile Weiwei Bai. Weiwei Bai finally saw who he was. She gritted her teeth and said, "Enle, I admit that I have not wronged you. Do you really want to kill me?" Enle's fingers froze and a trace of hesitation appeared on his face. But in the end, he raised his head and looked seriously at Weiwei Bai. "I'm sorry, miss, but I can't let her down." He owed Bai Yaro a life, so he had to protect her. Weiwei Bai felt her heart turn cold. She sneered, "How noble. Just because you can't let Bai Yaro down, you have to frame me. Your conscience must have been eaten by a dog." The system said, "Don't. Even a dog wouldn't eat this black-hearted thing." Enle struggled for a moment before finally raising his gun. "I'm sorry, miss. Please don't be an obstacle to her." Weiwei Bai sneered. Suddenly, she froze as she looked behind Enle. Was that a helicopter? Enle also noticed the commotion behind him. He raised his gun and wanted to end Weiwei Bai immediately. Weiwei Bai's face was filled with fear. "Bai Yaro. Bai Yaro is flying behind you." Enle was shocked. He couldn't care less about killing her and immediately turned around. The car was already in the sky, so it wasn't strange for Bai Yaro to fly as well. In the end, This delay allowed the person in the helicopter to see the gun in his hand. Without hesitation, he raised his sniper rifle and fired at his chest. Enla knew that he had missed the best chance to kill Wei Wei Bai. He gave up without hesitation and turned around to jump down from the lighthouse. Transmigration system, my idol, come over here. 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 Download the at https://m-soshu.com// to make it easier for you to read it next time. You can click save at the bottom to record this chapter. Transmigration system, my idol, come over here. Chapter 147. The sea swallowed him in an instant. And the system's reminder also sounded. Comprehensive protection package comes with a gift, novice gift pack, 3 days of vegetative life. The host's life countdown is 3 seconds, 2 seconds, ding, the gift pack is unlocked, please complete the next task to save your life. Wei Wei Bai, how many novice gift packs are there in the end? In addition to the novice gift pack, this broken system won't give anything else. Before she could complain, a burst of darkness had swept her away. Qin Qiu saw the car on the lighthouse, the front of the car was inside, and the rear of the car was outside. What the hell? He saw the sleeping Wei Wei Bai tied to the driver's seat, but not harmed, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. The sniper on the helicopter said that he saw the killer and fired. When he was on the boat, he was scared, worried that the bullet would hit Wei Wei Bai. Yi Yuxuan, that fool, was heartless. He was worried that if he didn't care, Yi Yuxuan wouldn't be able to find someone to marry in the future. Why did he, a doctor, have to worry about a matchmaker's heart? He felt bitter in his heart. When Yi Yuxuan finished his dream and woke up, it was already dawn. He sat on the bed, not knowing what he was thinking. Suddenly he turned over and got out of bed, opened the notebook without shoes, and opened the blank work page. Gender, female, age, young, not more than 25, name, forgotten appearance, forgotten hobby, like cemetery full of flowers. Dislike, ticklish, snakes and other similar creatures, hospitals. Yi Yuxuan suddenly paused, he realized what the strange emotion rolling up from the depths of his chest was. It was desire. He longed to find her. This was the first time since Yi Yuxuan was born that he truly felt his own emotions. Although it was only a little, but for him. This was a miracle. The phone rang again, Yi Yuxuan picked it up. Qin Qiu said happily, haha, your fiancée was saved by me, I'm amazing, you must not know where I saved her. Yi Yuxuan hung up the phone calmly and then looked at the computer in deep thought. How could he find her? Could it be that he could only see her in his dreams? Qin Qiu, who was hung up on, was Yi Yuxuan planning to be alone for the rest of her life? At the very least, he should have asked. He hadn't even told him about his heroic rescue. Bai Weiwei sullenly opened her eyes and was about to say something. The system trembled as it reminded him, don't say anything first. The taste is a little heavy. Hang in there. Weiwei Bai was stunned. Then, she heard a man's deep and gloomy voice. I think the Empress Dowager also knows that Bai Jiao killed the people of the Western faction guards in a vicious and cruel manner. I've always been someone who gives me a foot, and I'll return 10. He chopped off my hands, so I skinned him. It's karma. These words were spoken neither slowly nor quickly, but they were cold and treacherous. Weiwei Bai finally realized what she had seen. The ground was covered in blood, and even the bricks on the ground were stained. A skinned human body was curled up on the ground beyond recognition. It was a mess of flesh and blood, and it was still twitching. Weiwei Bai, the man was sitting on a chair near the door, wearing a black and red robe. His long black hair was simply tied behind him with a dark hairband, but it was not messy at all. He was clearly sitting in the sun, but his murderous aura was cold, making people shudder. He held a teacup in his hand, and unhurriedly used the lid to scrape the tea. It was as if the blood on the ground was insignificant to him. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -50. Transmigration system, male god, come here. Transmigration system, male god, come here / Transmigration system, male god, come here. Transmigration system, male god, come here. Transmigration system, male god, come here. Chapter 148. Wei Wei Bai heard the notification and was shocked by the -50. Her memories had not been transmitted, so she did not know what kind of enmity she had with the man in front of her. The man seemed to have sensed Wei Wei Bai's fear as he coldly curled his lips. Bai Jiao said that he wanted to see you before he died. I have always been merciful, so I fulfilled his wish. This meeting has been long enough, so I will send him on his way first. Without waiting for Wei Wei Bai to say anything, the man had already stood up and calmly walked over. Against the light, his appearance was finally revealed. His complexion was porcelain white, but his eyes were extremely dark, so dark that one could not see the bottom. Instead, it was so penetrating that it made one feel cold. His face was extremely beautiful, so beautiful that one could not distinguish his gender. There was a mole under his eyes that made him even more exquisite. This kind of beauty was not handsome, but did not have the slightest bit of femininity. Instead, it was so cold that it made one think of the pattern of a poisonous snake. He reached out and pulled out his sword, which flashed quickly. The skinned head had already rolled to Wei Wei Bai's feet. Wei Wei Bai only felt a chill run from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. This taste was so heavy that it was about to crush her. So scary RRR. The man took out a handkerchief and slowly wiped the blood on the sword. After wiping it, he threw the handkerchief away and turned around to see Wei Wei Bai's pale face. He gave a mocking smile, which was indescribably sinister. Is the Empress Dowager afraid? He slowly walked in front of her and reached out to lift her chin. Don't be afraid, this is just the beginning, how can you not be able to bear it now? His murmuring voice was full of affection, as if he was speaking to the person he loved the most. Wei Wei Bai's entire body stiffened. Her eyelashes trembled slightly and her delicate face was devoid of blood. The man coldly snorted, as if he was lamenting that this woman was only SOSO. He let go of her chin and turned to leave, but he felt someone tugging at the corner of his clothes. That? Wei Wei Bai said somewhat awkwardly. He turned around, cold and indifferent. Your clothes are stained with blood. The man looked at her indifferently. When he crawled out of hell covered in blood, this woman probably didn't see it. Wei Wei Bai pointed at the cloth behind his buttocks. This place will cause misunderstandings. It would make people think that you're a woman dressed as a man because you're on your period. The man didn't react at first, but he had always been suspicious and sensitive. In the blink of an eye, he knew where she was pointing. Was this an insult to him? The man turned around and instantly pressed Wei Wei Bai onto the chair with a murderous look on his face. Looks like you still don't know who you are. Bitch, you are now an ant under my feet. I can destroy you with a light step. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips. Her body was trembling, but her eyes were terrifyingly stubborn as she looked at him. The man touched her eyes with his finger. If you keep looking at me like that, I'll dig your eyes out. The system's notification sounded at the same time. Beginning memory transfer. Host receiving. The familiar headache made Wei Wei Bai frown. Cold sweat appeared on her forehead. When she realized what the original owner had done, she couldn't help but look at the man with pity. Too tragic. Too inhumane. The man's fingers suddenly attacked her neck. His fingertips lightly cut her neck and blood seeped out of her skin. What's with that look? Pity. Pity. Or are you afraid of what will happen to you? Wei Wei Bai didn't dare to move. She was afraid that if she moved, the male lead would directly cut off her head. The man felt bored. He let go of her and turned to leave. Bai Wei Wei's whole body shrank in the chair, trembling. She was really scared. This severed head, skinless corpse, and blood all over the floor. System, calm down, calm down. Wei Wei Bai finally couldn't help it. How can we attack this guy? The original owner has a grudge with this guy. Chapter 149. Wei Wei Bai had already despaired of this mission. In the past, no matter how strange it was, It was only a mother's death, or forced marriage. This time, she couldn't hold it at all. Just now, in front of her, the man who was skinned and beheaded, leaving behind a pool of blood, was Mu Yanjun. This guy was real, too. Eunuch. And he became a eunuch, because of the previous Wei Wei Bai. Mu Yanjun was originally from a scholarly family, and he himself was proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. And his family was harmonious, and his life was pleasant and smooth. The tragedy was that because the Bai family had a strong empress, it led to the relatives taking power. Even worse, the Bai family did not have a good person. Relying on the imperial power to bully men and tyrannize women, they also made a mess of the imperial court. Mu Yanjun's father was an imperial censor, and stood up to reprimand the Bai family for monopolizing power and abusing power. As a result, the Bai family was enraged. Wei Wei Bai's sister, who was the empress, issued an edict directly made the Mu family a rebellious subject, and the Mu family was exterminated. But Mu Yanjun, because of Wei Wei Bai's words, kept his life. Wei Wei Bai did not know Mu Yanjun, but on the day of the beheading, when she passed by, she pointed to Mu Yanjun. "This little slave is good, let him enter the palace to help me raise flowers." Wei Wei Bai estimated that it was just a casual remark, but the people below, to flatter the people of the Bai family, immediately complied. Mu Yanjun stayed, cut off his penis, and became a flower eunuch in the palace. And Wei Wei Bai completely forgot about Mu Yanjun. So Mu Yanjun suffered humiliation in the palace, step by step, from the deepest dirty pool of mud, crawling up bloody. For a full 10 years, from a teenager, he became today's 9,000-year-old, controlling everyone's life. And in the Bai family, before the empress died, she entrusted her only child to Wei Wei Bai. Let Wei Wei Bai enter the palace. The previous emperor had always been a sickly ghost. When Wei Wei Bai had just entered the palace, nothing had happened, but the previous emperor had already paid his respects. Wei Wei Bai became the empress dowager, and the current emperor was only 6 years old. After Mu Yanjun gained the upper hand, he raised his butcher's knife and brutally slaughtered the Bai clan. Wei Wei Bai's father was dismembered by 3,600 cuts. His mother was dismembered by 5 horses and thrown into a mass grave. His uncles, and nephews had all been cleaned up. Bai Jiao was Wei Wei Bai's younger brother. Now that he had been skinned and beheaded, he was lying next to her. The Bai family was finished now. Now it was Mu Yanjun's world. He used the little emperor as a puppet and sealed off the harem. Now whatever he said, no one dared to refute. After reading this, Wei Wei Bai held her forehead. "Lingling, do you have a rope?" The system replied, "Yes." Wei Wei Bai reached out, "Give it to me and I'll hang it. We'll meet again in the next life. I'm going to find my mother, don't stop me." Her poor mother had died early, and now she couldn't wait to accompany her. The system replied, "The rope needs life points to buy. Your account does not have enough value to buy it." With that said, Wei Wei Bai felt even more disheartened. She had done so many tasks, but the result was that she had not earned a single cent. She felt that she was the black-hearted boss young Bailaro, a life of oppression. Miserable. What was even more miserable was that Mu Yanjun now hated her the most. The Bai family had been cleaned up, and she was the only one left. Why not clean up? Of course, the most hated one was left for last, and slowly tortured. Wei Wei Bai suddenly remembered, "Where is my side reward?" Every time she did not say it, the system would not take the initiative to mention it. She suspected that if she forgot to ask for it, the system would directly embezzle her reward. Collections at the bottom to record the reading record. There. Chapter 150. The system flipped through the collection, but did not speak. Wei Wei Bai had already clasped her hands and prayed, "God, give me unparalleled martial arts, supreme power, millions of elite troops, if not, reward me with a country-toppling beauty, let me captivate all living beings." The system was speechless. It said, "Side reward, give you a sky monkey, send you to heaven." Wei Wei Bai, the system chuckled, "I lied to you." Ding, the system rewards the White Lotus temperament, issued. Wei Wei Bai was silent, her eyes calm. The system worried that she would not take it easy, and really want to hang herself in front of Mu Yanjun's door, advised, "It's okay, the favorability is only a trivial -50. -50 means that the male lead wants to kill you 100 times a day, and he can't kill you quickly, how to torture you to death, how to kill that kind of hatred. You work a little harder, brush up the favorability, and complete the task." The system's words were like a math teacher saying, "Come, math is not terrible at all. Let's give an example. 1 + 1 = 2. Very good, you already understand the basic principles of math. Come, please prove why 1 + 1 = 2. What a fuck." Wei Wei Bai pondered for a moment, and finally said, "I remember, the original owner and Mu Yanjun were not familiar." System, not familiar, the male lead only knows that this woman cut off his JJ, causing him to become a eunuch, so every time he is bullied, he will put the blame on the original owner. Speaking of meeting, Mu Yanjun had never seen Wei Wei Bai. If you don't count today's meeting of throwing the skinned corpse. Wei Wei Bai clapped her hands. "That's good, if we were too familiar, my personality would change greatly, and he would not be fooled." The system was puzzled. Wei Wei Bai touched the system's dog head. "Come, I'll show you what a lovely little white lotus is." The smell of blood wantonly spread. All the officials at the scene were quiet and terrible, each as stiff as stone. The only one sitting was Mu Yanjun, lazily leaning against the chair, his fingers tapping the armrest of the chair. His eyes slanted slightly, and the corners of his delicate eyes lifted, bringing out a trace of malicious sternness. "Darin, you all serve His Majesty. You all know that His Majesty is still young and cannot be frightened. You came to His Majesty's residence with great fanfare, shouting and killing. Are you planning to rebel?" The last sentence was said in an evil and ruthless manner, sending chills down people's spines. The dozens of officials kneeling on the ground were either related to the Bai family or had harmed the Mu family in the past. They were also staking everything on one throw. They wanted to enter the palace tonight to snatch the emperor away and protect themselves. As a result, Mu Yanjun was already sitting outside the emperor's residence, waiting for them to take the bait. An official said in a trembling voice, "We just want to see His Majesty." The corners of Mu Yanjun's mouth lifted, a smile that was not a smile, but his tone was very cold. "Oh, bringing a knife to see His Majesty, it seems that you think the snow in this palace is too dull, and want to use your own blood to add color." An official couldn't stand it, he shouted, "Traitor Mu, you put the Empress Dowager and His Majesty under house arrest. Everyone knows that you are a traitorous eunuch. A lowly thing like you is worthy to talk to us here. Sooner or later you will not have a good death." Mu Yanjun's fingers tapping the armrest stopped, his face as heavy as water. He casually raised his eyes, and suddenly revealed a smile. "Well, then I will send you on a journey, let you go talk to Yama, let him come and take my life earlier." With that, he raised his hand and said coldly, "Kill them all for me." The guards who had already surrounded him pulled out their knives, and in a flash, the palace was stained with blood. Mu Yanjun got up and heard the little emperor crying in fear in the palace, and felt his mood improve. But when he thought of others calling him a eunuch, his eyes sank, and his mood became irritable again. The comma. Chapter 151. You can search in Baidu for fast crossing system, male god, you come to search book, www.soshu.com, to find the. He coldly hummed, "Where is the Empress Dowager?" A little eunuch next to him immediately crawled to his feet and flattered, "The Empress Dowager is still locked up with her brother." Thinking of Wei Wei Bai locked up with the skinless corpse, that woman had been pampered since childhood, only humiliating people. When did she experience this? Maybe she had already gone crazy. Mu Yanjun laughed sarcastically, "How can I let her have it so easy? Tonight, I will serve our Empress Dowager." Wei Wei Bai sat next to the corpse, constantly hypnotizing herself. This was a white chicken, not a person. Then she took a deep breath to calm down, waiting for the system to remind her that the male lead had arrived. A choking sound suppressed in her throat, very bleak. "Little Zhao, sister is useless, I can't protect you. You have been kind since childhood, and your only dream is to protect your home and defend the country. You are only 16 years old, how can you suffer this? Mu Yanjun had just walked to the door when he heard Wei Wei Bai's words. He coldly hummed, Bai Jiao was vicious and domineering. He never regarded civilians as human beings, and it was unknown how many people he had killed. He was kind. Protect the home and defend the country? What a joke. Wei Wei Bai weakly choked, I can't kill the traitor, I can only accompany you myself, my poor kind brother. Mu Yanjun heard the sound of the blade being pulled out and kicked the door open. He walked in and saw Wei Wei Bai holding a knife to her own chest. Her eyes were desperate and confused, and the knife was about to enter her chest. Mu Yanjun casually picked the flower leaf next to him, flicked the leaf, and directly bounced off the knife in Wei Wei Bai's hand. Wei Wei Bai was startled, and her whole person stepped back. Her skirt was stained with blood, and she was somewhat embarrassed, but it did not diminish her soft and beautiful appearance. The Empress Dowager's status is noble. Isn't it too dull to die like this? Mu Yanjun's indifferent tone sounded ghostly and gloomy in the night. Wei Wei Bai's face was pale, but she was not afraid. Her eyes were clear and fearless in the candlelight. The traitor is in power, there is no way to be loyal. Wei Wei Bai looked at Mu Yanjun, her back straight and upright. My Bai family is loyal and devoted to those above, humble and virtuous to those below. We have never wronged anyone, nor have we ever slandered anyone. Now that we have fallen to this end, it is to repay the country with death, leaving behind a good name for hundreds of generations, a heart of loyalty. The system silently flipped through the Bai family's information. Framing the loyal, abusing power and interfering in politics, bullying men and women, corruption and selling official positions, causing the imperial court to be in a foul atmosphere and the people to have no way to make a living. The host's ability to lie through his teeth must be at least level 10. Mu Yanjun seemed to have heard a joke, and laughed darkly. You say, you have never wronged a person? Wei Wei Bai stood in the coagulated blood and raised her head to look at him. She was neither afraid nor hesitant. Yes, because I know that they are all kind people. The system silently flipped through the information folder and looked at the number of people that the Bai family had killed by mistake. It was enough to build the Great Wall. He was so fucking kind. Mu Yanjun looked at her, but he could not see the fear he wanted, the timidity, and the guilt. She stood quietly in the pool of blood, clearly weak, but there was a sharp coldness like a steel knife. She emphasized word by word, even if I die, I know that our Bai family is righteous and kind, and you are doomed to stink for thousands of years. Mu Yanjun only felt that his reason was broken. Wei Wei Bai gently tapped the system. Do you know what makes the victim collapse the most? The system had already admired her ability to lie. What is it? Wei Wei Bai, deny that he has been harmed, and then he will. Not waiting for her to finish, a cold hand had already gripped her neck. Wei Wei Bai, very good. Mu Yanjun's eyes lit up like a ghost fire. I won't let you die, I will let you live a life worse than death. Chapter 152. You can search in Baidu for fast crossing system, Prince Charming, you come to search book, www.soshu.com, to find the system's obsessive-compulsive disorder flared up. Then what will he do? Wei Wei Bai's face was noble and cold, pitiful and unyielding. He will leave me a dog's life, and then toss me to my death. I have to admit that he is a pitiful victim, and my idiot father, mother, brother and so on are the culprits. System, I thought he would increase his favorability towards you. Wei Wei Bai, you think too much, I can't even keep my life, where will the favorability come from? -50. Every minute he wanted to kill her favorability. If she didn't do something, she would be killed by Mu Yanjun. Mu Yanjun couldn't bear to see Wei Wei Bai's clear and clean eyes. The Bai family's people were all beasts, all dregs, all should be killed. He lowered his eyes, and the malice in his eyes seeped out. Want to know what your father did? He framed. Wei Wei Bai coldly hummed, I don't listen to the words of a traitor. Mu Yanjun's fingers trembled, abruptly pinching a mark on her neck. He framed. Wei Wei Bai stubbornly straightened her neck. I don't listen to the words of a person with a vicious heart. Mu Yanjun gritted his teeth. Wei Wei Bai suddenly sneered. You don't want to say that my Bai family framed loyal people, ran amok, acted recklessly, killed countless innocent people, and then put a tall hat on yourself, saying that you were one of the people who were framed, so you came for revenge. Mu Yanjun. Isn't this well known? Wei Wei Bai's tone was cold and righteous. Do I look like a person who is so easily deceived? What you said is a lie. Mu Yanjun only felt that his anger of revenge was abruptly blocked by Wei Wei Bai's words. His brows furrowed, and anger colored his eyes. The calm voice also became fierce. Have you forgotten how you made me like this? Wei Wei Bai sized him up and said seriously, I don't know you. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -52. Mu Yanjun finally got angry. His hand touched the dagger at his waist, and the tip of the knife directly stabbed into Wei Wei Bai's eyes. Wei Wei Bai didn't even blink. She looked like she wasn't afraid of death. The tip of the knife was so close to touching his eyes. Mu Yanjun's voice was clear and low, completely different from his gloomy and treacherous tone. Your Bai clan has stirred up chaos in the world. The people have no way of making a living, and who knows how many people have died. You still have the face to tell me that the Bai clan is a loyal subject. Wei Wei Bai's face was pale, and her long hair was draped over her back. She looked so delicate that she would break at the slightest touch. But facing the tip of his knife, her pupils didn't even shrink. She pursed her lips, frowned, and said word by word, why don't I have the face to say it? What I said is the truth. Our Bai family has been loyal for generations, how can you slander us? She was not afraid at all. She was so innocent that she really felt that the Bai family was kind. No. Mu Yanjun bowed his head and observed with cold eyes. It wasn't as if she didn't look like she was lying. His father was a good official who was framed. He was tortured to death and was unwilling to change his words to harm others. He also had this expression before he died. Calm, fearless of life and death. His eyes were full of calm and clean firmness. Wei Wei Bai suddenly reached out and grabbed the blade of his knife. She looked up and sent the knife to her own neck. Her movements were clean and neat, without a trace of hesitation. Her fingers were cut by the knife, but it couldn't stop her resolute desire to die. Mu Yanjun's black and strange eyes trembled slightly. His hand moved as fast as lightning, and the dagger returned to its scabbard. Wei Wei Bai couldn't retract her strength. Her whole body was thrown into his arms. Read at https://www.soshu.com// Read at https://m-soshu.com collections at the bottom to record the reading record. Chapter 153. Mu Yanjun only felt a fragrant wind hit him, followed by a soft and warm body contact. He was absent-minded for a moment. Wei Wei Bai had already reached down to grab him. She intended to pull out the dagger that he had just inserted and commit suicide again. If she wanted to die, she wanted to die thoroughly, lest he be suspicious. But the movement was too fast, and she couldn't see clearly. Her movements deviated a bit, and then her fingers caught, soft. Something with weight. What's that? Mu Yanjun trembled all over, and his rage made his expression ferocious. Bai Wei Wei, what happened to not having a JJ? What about a real eunuch? What was that thing in her hand? Ding, congratulations to the host for opening the side task. Please complete the task of Mu Yanjun's JJ. The first stage of the task, to find Mu Yanjun's JJ, has been completed. Please continue to work hard. I forgot to ask, is the host willing to accept the side task? Wei Wei Bai roared at the system. Who wants to take this kind of inexplicable ghost task that will definitely be beaten into a pulp? Refuse. Ding, the host refuses the task. Ding, refuse to refute. The host has accepted the task. Come on MWH Wei Wei Bai. This system, could it be any more shameless? Mu Yanjun's eyes constricted, his fingers slid to his waist, pulled out the dagger, and was just about to chop off her troublesome hand. Wei Wei Bai's fingers may have been because of nervousness, but she couldn't help but exert force. Mu Yanjun groaned, and a strange numbness suddenly hit him. His expression changed, his eyes darkened, and a faint blush appeared on his extremely white face. The dagger in his hand hesitated, and did not chop down at the first moment. Wei Wei Bai had released that part of his body. Her face was ignorant of the world, as if she didn't know what she had just caught. Her expression was mournful, and her thin body was tottering, but when she looked at Mu Yanjun, her eyes were unusually clear, her posture was straight, and her elegant temperament made her inviolable. You kill me, I believe the world will give me justice. I was born pure and innocent, and I will die pure and innocent. My Bai family is not a family that you can slander and throw dirty water at. Mu Yanjun saw her making such a solemn vow, and for a moment he wondered if he had killed the wrong enemy. Weren't the people of the Bai family all greedy for life and afraid of death? Weren't they all ugly and ugly before they died? Mu Yanjun tried to calm his irritable heart. He laughed coldly, and his voice was lowered, extremely gloomy. You're too talkative. I'll cut off your mouth first. As soon as he finished speaking, he sensed that something was wrong. When he lowered his head, he saw that Wei Wei Bai had already fainted on the ground. Her face was pale, her brows were furrowed, and her face was covered in sweat. It was as if his body couldn't hold on any longer. He had been holding on until he finally collapsed. Mu Yanjun only felt that he had been suppressing the resentment in his heart. Originally, he had leveled the Bai family and felt a lot more comfortable. As a result, with only half a breath left, it was unexpectedly blocked by Wei Wei Bai. Not only was it blocked, but she also dug a few knives into his chest. He didn't feel the thrill of revenge at all. There was only endless grievance. This woman made him so miserable, and the result was that she said she didn't know him. Mu Yanjun reached for her, then dragged her out of the room and threw her into the corridor outside the door. It was snowing outside, and it was cold to the bone. When the people waiting outside saw Mu Yanjun, they immediately moved a chair and knelt to wait for him to sit down. Mu Yanjun said coldly, "Let me see how innocent you are. Come on, pour water on me." Full text //. Download. Collections at the bottom to record the reading record. There. Chapter 154. Wei Wei Bai was originally pretending to be unconscious. When a bucket of ice water was poured over her, the biting cold made her shiver. Her eyelids moved, and she finally woke up. She weakly lay on the ground, snowflakes flying to her body. Her eyes, soaked with ice water, carried a trace of confusion, but there was a kind of breathtaking pure beauty. Mu Yanjun stared at her, trying to find a trace of timid fear on her face. But there was none. The confusion in her eyes disappeared, and what burst out was a quenching strength. Mu Yanjun really hated this kind of strength. The more she was like this, the more she told him that his 10 years of humiliation were in vain. When this woman saw him, she did not kneel down and beg for mercy, and was extremely humble and ugly. She even dared to look so wronged. Her appearance, wasn't it a slap to his face? Wasn't it telling him that even if he was already standing at the top, in her eyes, he was still nothing? Continue to pour for me. Mu Yanjun sat, a pair of malicious eyes, fiercely staring at her face. He did not believe that such a young miss who had never suffered before would be able to withstand his punishment. Wei Wei Bai was doused with another bucket of ice water, and she shivered violently. Snowflakes flew in, and the extremely low temperature could kill her. Wei Wei Bai felt that she could ascend to heaven with one breath. She knocked on the system. "I think I'm going to die, you go find the next host." System, if you beg for mercy, the male lead may not water you. Wei Wei Bai sneered, "You don't understand this kind of pervert's heart. Why do you think he didn't kill me when he was -50? Isn't it because he couldn't bear to see me as pure as ice, as pure as jade, and as noble and elegant as dying? He waited for me to beg for mercy until I exploded. When I beg for mercy, he will see my ugly state and feel that I'm nothing more than that. Then he can happily chop me into minced meat. Do you believe it? System, why does the host know so much about perverts? Wei Wei Bai, if I don't beg for mercy, I can live a little longer." The system flipped through some information. Your physical condition is enough to apply for the minimum guarantee from the system library. Ding, the host's life safety guarantee has arrived. please accept. Wei Wei Bai accepted it, and the pain in her body disappeared. The system said, you won't feel any pain for a day. As long as it's not a fatal attack, no punishment can kill you. Wei Wei Bai shed tears of gratitude. System, after the mission is completed, 5 days of HP will be deducted. Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. Mu Yanjun looked on coldly, watching Wei Wei Bai being tortured by the ice water. But he felt like there was a thorn in his heart. Why wasn't she begging for mercy? It was fine even if there was a trace of fear on her face. Her current appearance made him look even more despicable and despicable. Another bucket of ice water was poured on her. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled, but her clear eyes were not moved at all. Mu Yanjun got up, walked over to her and squatted down. He stretched out his slender fingers and lifted her chin. As long as you say that your Bai family is despicable, I will let you go and let you continue to be the Honorable Empress Dowager. How about that? People could still be mighty and unyielding in the face of punishment, but in the face of wealth and glory, that was not necessarily the case. Wei Wei Bai finally raised her eyes. Her eyes were like colored glass, reflecting his face. Suddenly she smiled. In this kind of snow, it was as bright as a spring flower. Mu Yanjun, I really pity you. Besides physical abuse, what else can you do? I am not afraid of death, because I am worthy of anyone. Mu Yanjun's fingertips exerted force, scratching the skin of her jaw. Beads of blood oozed out. But Wei Wei Bai was not moved at all. Look at yourself, you really look like an evil ghost. The last sentence was even worse. These days, because the new story is more difficult to write, there has been no time to take care of the comments section. I can't reply to the rewards and comments, I'm sorry. There will be time in the future to make up for it together. Thank you for your encouragement. I'm very happy. See you tomorrow night. Address of the full text, https://www.soshu.com. Download address of the mobile reading, https://m-soshu.com. Chapter 155. Mu Yanjun's heart was shaken. In her eyes, he saw his own dark face. 10 years, he had been rolling in the dark hell for 10 years. Even if he climbed up, he was not the same as he was 10 years ago. What was the difference between him and the Bai family? They were all equally ugly. Mu Yanjun pinched her chin, more forcefully. Wei Wei Bai did not even frown, her eyes were terrifyingly calm as she looked at him, as if she could easily see through all his dirty past. Mu Yanjun felt an unspeakable disgust for these eyes. Too clean. The Bai family should not be so clean, especially this woman. She made him look like this today, but she herself was still incomparably clean. Wei Wei Bai was dizzy. The system's subsistence could only guarantee that she would not die, and would not hurt, but other symptoms of weakness could not be shielded. She struggled to open her eyes, weakly reached out and grabbed his wrist, the smile on her mouth unchanged. If you want to kill me, then kill me quickly. I don't have time to chat with you, my parents are still waiting for me. Her voice was cold, soft and hoarse, and the ending raised, with a hint of coquettishness. It was as if she was not facing an executioner, but her closest lover. She was not asking for death, but she wanted a kiss. Mu Yanjun was hooked by her voice, and his ears were a little itchy. He thought of the place where she had just touched him. She did not feel that anything was wrong. Also, with the previous emperor's appearance, he could not touch her. Was that why she knew nothing? Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -45. Wei Wei Bai heard the reminder, and could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The bet was right, this man liked clean women. The temperament of a white lotus just increased her persuasiveness. So the cleaner and stronger she was, even if he hated her, his favorability would not fall to -50. The so-called white lotus, was it not just pretending to be pure? Mu Yanjun grabbed her long hair in one hand, he really could not bear to see her fearless appearance. He was just about to say a few sarcastic words, only to find that she had softly sprawled, her face was like ice and snow, bloodless, and had already fainted. Mu Yanjun released her hair, got up and looked at her coldly. Suddenly, He turned around and saw the servant beside him carrying ice water. He walked over and grabbed the bucket of water, pouring it on Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled. This time, she would never wake up. Mu Yanjun's eyes were filled with anger, but the corners of his mouth were smiling. Well, I'd like to see how long you can persist. He had once persevered like this, but what was the use of perseverance? In the end, he still ended up like this. Why was she special? Mu Yanjun gloomily looked at her, ignoring the peculiar fluctuations in his heart. He turned and reached out. Immediately, a chamberlain came to support him, and the people below heard Mu Yanjun's instructions. Guards, bring the Empress Dowager into the prison of the West Factory. When the others heard about the prison in the Western Factory, they couldn't help but tremble. Mu Yanjun did not look back, but his voice was gloomy. Don't let her die. Several little eunuchs immediately ran madly to find the imperial physician. Mu Yanjun said that he would not let the person die. If he really died, they did not need to live. Wei Wei Bai felt like she was rolling in fire and ice, and finally came back to life. Mu Yanjun was really ruthless. If not for the safety and security guarantee, she would have already died. The system saw that she woke up and breathed a sigh of relief. There are some things I haven't said to you. Fortunately, you woke up. Fast crossing system, male god, you come here. 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 Chapter 156. You can search in Baidu for Fast Transmigration System, Prince Charming. You come to search book, www.soshu.com, to find the. Wei Wei Bai was moved. Are you going to say something worried about me? The system cleared its throat, and then, ding, the host's task is to win Mu Yanjun's love. The goal is Mu Yanjun, the completion rate is 0. Time is 6 months. Wei Wei Bai was moved. The system explained, well, this plane's taste is a bit heavy. I was scared at first and forgot to tell you these rules. Wei Wei Bai, MDZZ. Then Wei Wei Bai had time to look around. When she looked up, she saw cockroaches and rats running around. The imperial doctor outside the cell was respectful to Mu Yanjun. The Empress Dowager is awake, there is no big problem. Mu Yanjun wiped his hands with a handkerchief. His slender and beautiful fingers showed a jade-like color under the light and shadow. His eyelids lifted slightly, and he said unhurriedly, it's good that you won't die, go down. Then he looked at Wei Wei Bai lying weakly on the straw mat in the cell. She seemed to be still a little confused, her brows slightly wrinkled, and her delicate demeanor was clear. But when she saw clearly who was sitting outside the cell, the softness in her eyes disappeared, leaving only an indifferent calm. Mu Yanjun's fingers holding the handkerchief paused. He really hated that he could not peel the calm off her face. The Empress Dowager, are you awake? He asked knowingly, his indifference full of malice. Wei Wei Bai did not lift her eyes, just stared at the wall. A big rat ran past from the side, but she did not know how to be afraid. Mu Yanjun smiled gloomily. The Empress Dowager knows why the rats in this prison are so fat and tender. Wei Wei Bai did not say anything, as if Mu Yanjun was heir. Because these rats grew up eating human flesh, and most of them are living human flesh. Mu Yanjun's eyes were deeper. He looked at Wei Wei Bai like he was examining her. He did not believe that this woman could be so indifferent. How many strong men had been sent into his prison? Before the torture had even reached their bodies, they had already been scared stiff by his description of the torture in just a few words. The people here are often tortured to the point where they can't get up. When the rats swarm up, they eat the people alive. The system silently covered its ears. That's so scary. I won't listen. Wei Wei Bai snorted at the system, useless. Mu Yanjun slowly threw the handkerchief to the ground, stretched out a clean hand, and took the knife next to him. Do you know what the knife in my hand is for? Wei Wei Bai faintly glanced at him, completely without a trace of emotion, as if Mu Yanjun, in her eyes, was not even as good as air. Mu Yanjun's fingers couldn't help but pinch the knife hard. His tone was angry as he said, this is used to cut meat, slice by slice, and then remove the bones. A living person will become a plate of meat. The system was scared out of its wits. So scary, I want to apply to leave this plane and change to a male pig. Wei Wei by indifferently read, roast duck, roast chicken, braised goose, fish head, braised pork, fried pork ribs, fried shrimp, pickled bacon. I am a big foodie country, what kind of meat have I not seen? You want to scare me with human flesh, MPH. System, fuck, I can't look straight at these delicacies in the future. Mu Yanjun pinched the knife's fingers so hard that they turned white. She did not even look at him, not even a little bit afraid. This made him anxious and irritable. Mu Yanjun got up, took the knife and kicked open the prison door. In a flash, he came to Wei Wei Bai, and the knife stuck to her cheek. It seems that the Empress Dowager thinks that I dare not use the punishment I just mentioned on you. Wei Wei Bai looked at him indifferently. Finally, her expression fluctuated, it was contempt. Fast crossing system, male god, you come here. Fast crossing system, male god, you come here. Full text / fast crossing system, male god, you come here. Download text. Fast crossing system, male god, you come here. The fast crossing system, male god, you come here, comma. Chapter 157. I really have never seen a villain with such poor means. Do you think that physical torture is the most terrible means in this world? Mu Yanjun was stung by her sharp words, and the knife in his hand was unsteady, leaving a trace of blood on her snow-white cheek. Seeing the blood, his heart trembled, and his movements unconsciously slowed down. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -40. Unconsciously, he followed her rhythm, and even his killing intent towards her did not emerge as frequently as it did at the beginning. He smiled coldly, and on his beautiful and enchanting face, there was a trace of evil for no reason. Oh, I have to respectfully listen to the Empress Dowager's reprimand. If physical pain is not enough to make you frown, then what kind of punishment can move you? In that snowy field, with the ice water pouring on her, she did not even frown. In this prison full of man-eating rats, listening to his horrifying description of punishment, there was no fear. To be able to be calm to this point, she was the only one he had seen so far. Wei Wei Bai looked up at him, her eyes were like water, but more indifferent than ice. You think that the most painful thing is turning the skin and splitting the flesh, breaking the bones and breaking the tendons. But this is just a small trick, the real torture is to move the heart. Mu Yanjun seemed to have heard some absurd words, and sneered, move the heart? Wei Wei Bai suddenly smiled, and this smile made her very vivid. Yes, move the heart, and then mercilessly smash that heart. This trick is the world's biggest torture. You can't live, you can't die, you can only be tortured day and night, with no relief. This was the first time Mu Yanjun had heard of this kind of punishment. But after thinking about it, he felt that it was indeed true. What was more painful than crushing a person's heart? Wei Wei Bai finished saying this, and tiredly closed her eyes. So you can't make me suffer, because I won't be moved by you. Mu Yanjun laughed angrily. He couldn't bear to see her indifferent attitude. He reached out and pushed her against the cold wall. He held her face in his hands, and with his cold lips, he maliciously stuck to the bloodstain on her cheek. Wei Wei Bai's entire body trembled. The calmness in her eyes shattered. She panicked and began to push him away with all her might. Evil thief, what are you doing? Scram. She didn't even frown when the ice water torture was so cruel that it almost took her life. In the end, a simple kiss was enough to frighten her to this extent. Mu Yanjun caught her weakness. He didn't care about her weak resistance at all. The kiss became terrifying. He licked the wounds on her face like a gorgeous beast, his eyes full of aggression. Wei Wei Bai was even more frightened. Tears gathered in her eyes. Don't touch me, don't touch me. Mu Yanjun's movements stopped, and she breathed a sigh of relief. He saw her relaxed expression, and the malicious smile on his mouth became more obvious. So you are afraid of this? Wei Wei Bai didn't open her face. Her face was pale. You are a rebellious madman. If you want to kill me, then kill me. You can't use such a dirty method to humiliate me. These words made it clear to him that she was not afraid of torture, but of being humiliated. Mu Yanjun smiled, and flipped her over to the ground. He bowed his head and captured her soft lips, violently sucking and ravaging. What are you afraid of? What am I going to do? Wei Wei Bai finally cried, let me go, you let me go. Mu Yanjun's sullen mood was finally soothed. He knew how to torture her. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -30. And read the download collections at the bottom to record the reading record. There. Chapter 158. Wei Wei Bai's struggle was so insignificant that Mu Yanjun easily suppressed her feeble resistance. Although Wei Wei Bai was already the Empress Dowager, she was still young when she entered the palace. She had only been the Empress Dowager for a year, and at the age of 18, she was at her most beautiful. Black hair and snow-white skin, where his fingers passed, it was delicate and smooth to the touch. When she trembled, her eyes no longer had the righteous calmness from before. Instead, they were full of fragility and panic that he could control. Mu Yanjun lowered his eyes, and with a smile, he sarcastically said, "Isn't the Empress Dowager's mouth very good at talking? You beg for mercy and I'll listen. When I'm in a good mood, I may let go of you." Wei Wei Bai was forced into a corner by his obscene actions. Her eyes were watery, but she still stubbornly refused to say a word to beg for mercy. Mu Yanjun's fingers came to her chest, and her outer garment was stripped off by him. His fingertips pressed on the knot of the light green bodice. "If you don't beg for mercy, I'll open this knot." Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled. She bit her lip, and her eyes showed a fierce struggle. In the end, she seemed to give up. Her whole body lost strength and she leaned back, exposing her neck. It was like a sacrifice, pure and full of ignorant temptation. Mu Yanjun's throat tightened, and his eyes deepened. There was an unknown twisted pleasure that made him very happy. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -25. Wei Wei Bai moved her lips, and just when he thought she couldn't hold on and was going to beg for mercy. Her voice was cold as stone. "If you want to untie it, untie it. Even if you strip me naked and throw me into the snow to be humiliated, I will not ask you for a word." Mu Yanjun's originally happy mood was ruined by her one sentence. Wei Wei Bai had restored her indifferent appearance. "Do you think that physical torture can make me yield? In your dreams." Mu Yanjun was angry. His fingers moved, and he directly opened her bellyband. A large area of delicate snow-white skin was exposed. Wei Wei Bai's eyes flickered. Although she tried not to be afraid, her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Mu Yanjun sneered, trying to suppress the strange impulse of seeing the girl's body. He gloomily said, "Then I will help you. I will strip you naked and throw you into the snow." After he finished speaking, he got up and reached out to drag her. However, he did not expect that the originally weak Wei Wei Bai would suddenly pull away from his hand and then resolutely slam into the wall of the cell. He didn't hold back at all in this charge. Running into it would result in death. Mu Yanjun was surprised by her unexpected action. He didn't even think about it. He flashed to her side, reached for her waist, and hugged her whole person. This hug was incomparably soft and fragrant, a feeling completely different from her stubborn and unyielding gaze. Mu Yanjun was absent-minded for a moment. Wei Wei Bai had already taken the opportunity to break free from his hands, and the whole person quickly fled to the corner. She reached out and hugged her messy clothes. She shrank in the corner, glaring at him with red eyes. She was wronged and helpless, but there was no sign of surrender. Mu Yanjun suddenly remembered that when he first entered the palace and was abused and bullied, he also had this attitude. Refused to give in. But was covered with scars. He revealed a gloomy smile, walked up to her, bent down, and reached out to touch her face. "You want to die, I won't let you die." Wei Wei Bai suddenly grabbed his hand and bit down hard. Her teeth broke the skin on the back of his hand, and blood flowed out. Fast crossing system, male god, you come here to read the https://www.soshu.com fast crossing system, male god, you come here to read at https://www.soshu.com// fast crossing system, male god, you come here to text download at https://www.soshu.com fast crossing system, male god, you come here to read the at https://m-soshu.com the fast crossing system, male god, you come here, comma. Chapter 159. Mu Yanjun reflexively pulled back his hand, and the violent wind pushed her away. The huge force made her hit the wall, and blood flowed from her forehead. Mu Yanjun was surprised. He reached out and picked her up. His fingers touched her neck, and when he felt the familiar pulse, he breathed a sigh of relief. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -20. Outside the prison door, a little eunuch suddenly knelt and said, Du Zhu, the emperor said he has something to tell you. Mu Yanjun held the person in his hand, and other things seemed to be unable to arouse his interest. He looked down at her. His tone was cold again. Oh, what is the little emperor making a fuss about? The little eunuch was respectful. He said, if the empress dowager dies, he will also die. Mu Yanjun chuckled, incomparably cold. Oh, this is all rushing to die. How come I don't know? The Bai family, the remaining two, one has more integrity than the other. The little emperor also had half the blood of the Bai family. When the little eunuch heard his laughter, he trembled all over, thinking that the empress dowager and the little emperor were going to die. As a result, he heard Mu Yanjun casually say, you go and tell the little emperor, if he makes any more trouble, I will kill the empress dowager. The little eunuch's mouth was quick. Don't you want to kill them now? During this time, the people of the Bai family were almost killed by Mu Yanjun. Mu Yanjun slowly walked in front of the little eunuch. Suddenly, he lifted his foot and kicked him out. When I want to kill people, do I need you to question it? Wei Bai felt that this plane was tormenting her to death. She was in pain all over, and in a daze, there was a broken cry in her ears. Mother, wake up. Bai Wei thought someone was playing a Qing dynasty drama. She struggled to open her eyes and saw a little fatty lying next to her, crying and sobbing. Wei Bai, who is this? System, your son. Wei Bai woke up with a start. When did she have a son? Little fatty saw that she had woken up and shouted, Mother, you're alive. Wei Bai said weakly, I'm not dead yet. She recalled the information and barely recognized the fat man as the 6-year-old emperor, the son of the older sister of her current body. The little fatty whined, Mother, I'm so scared, Mu Yanjun, that dead eunuch killed a lot of people. The system reminded her, the male lead is outside. Little fatty rubbed his eyes. He's just a mere eunuch. Even if he forces us to our deaths, can he still become the emperor? Wei Bai had a hard time getting Mu Yanjun to change from killing her to torturing her. For little fatty to poke his sore spot like a eunuch, isn't he just asking for death? Wei Bai weakly stopped him. Don't say that. At the very least, don't curse so harshly. Little fatty started crying. Why can't I say it? She's just a lowly servant. He was so young, yet he was already so good at scolding others. He had a bright future ahead of him. But she didn't want to die with him. Was it easy for her to live until now? Wei Bai thought of how she dealt with the brat in the past. Suddenly her face changed, and she said in a deep voice, Enough, Your Majesty. Little fatty was startled, frightened by her. Wei Bai coldly said, even if you're an enemy, you can't open your mouth and keep insulting people. To fight, you have to fight fair and square. To die, you have to die fair and square. You scold people behind their backs, not only do you lose your own face, but you also lower your own status. Little fatty was silly. What happened to his mother? Didn't she love to gossip behind his back? Button. Chapter 160. Wei Bai hated iron for not becoming steel. You have half of the Bai family's blood in you, you should have the Bai family's strength of character. Little fatty, what is their Bai family's strength of character? Bullying people? Little fatty said with some trepidation, Mother, whether it is the Bai family or the royal family, they have all been killed. He was small, but he was not stupid. Of course, he knew that his situation was not good. When Wei Wei Bai heard this, the tears in her eyes immediately rolled down. She held back her sobs. I know, father, mother, and brother are all dead. Little Fatty did not expect her to cry, and was at a loss for a moment. Wei Wei Bai finally broke down. She bowed her head, and tears fell down one by one. I still remember crying when father sent me to the palace. I always remember that he taught me to be humble, to treat people sincerely. Little Fatty, he remembered that his grandfather had always taught them that their family was powerful, and they did not have to be afraid of killing people. My mother told me that father had been working hard for the court, and his body was exhausted. Little Fatty, wait, didn't his grandfather wander in the brothel? That's why his body was exhausted. My brother told me before the new year that he was going to the border to defend the city, to protect the people. Little Fatty was stunned. Wasn't his uncle the most lazy, greedy, and lecherous? He would defend the city? Wei Wei Bai cried until her voice was hoarse. But why, they all have to die. I don't know what I did wrong, why it's not me who died. Little Fatty was moved. His greedy and cowardly mother, was she so kind? Mu Yanjun, who was standing outside the door, also frowned slightly. Could it be that she really did not know the dirty things of the Bai family? Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -15. Little Fatty was just about to say something when the door opened. Mu Yanjun, dressed in a red and black robe, slowly walked in. He glanced faintly. Come, it's time to go to court, invite the emperor out. Immediately, some people came in with their heads down. One person took one side, and took Little Fatty out of court. Wei Wei Bai immediately struggled to get up, wanting to protect Fatty. Don't touch him. Mu Yanjun came to her side, reached out and gently pushed her back to the bed. The Empress Dowager is tired, it's time to rest. With this delay, the Little Fatty was carried out and the door closed. When Wei Wei Bai saw that the door was closed, her expression became vigilant. She immediately shrank to the corner of the bed and pulled the quilt to wrap herself tightly. Mu Yanjun saw her like this and smiled. I've touched you, what's the use of hiding now? Wei Wei Bai remained silent. Mu Yanjun found that what he disliked the most was the way she ignored him. His voice was as cold as ice. Don't you want to see what your nephew is doing? He didn't say son and directly said nephew. Wei Wei Bai's eyes trembled. She was no longer indifferent. Mu Yanjun smiled coldly. Suddenly, he picked her up with the quilt and went straight out. Wei Wei Bai was only wearing an undergarment, and struggled in a panic. What are you doing? Mu Yanjun easily stopped her movements, going to court. By the time Wei Wei Bai realized what this sentence meant, she was already sitting on Mu Yanjun's lap, facing the civil and military ministers. Although there was a bead curtain in front of them, it was still very shameful. Mu Yanjun held her in one hand, and held a memorial in the other to review. Wei Wei Bai saw some of the officials below look up at them in surprise. She couldn't help but tremble, and wanted to push Mu Yanjun away. Mu Yanjun pinched her waist with his fingers, and his lips were close to her ear. He ambiguously said, "Move again, I'll press you down here." Read the full text //. Download the full text. Read the full text. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.